Hello to all my dear followers. Before I begin with the fanfic, I want to mention that the channel members are active, and you'll receive special mentions in all the videos. Now I welcome you to the second season of What If Naruto Fell in Love with Conan. Thank you so much for the huge reception of the first season. Remember to hit that like button. And without further ado, I'll leave you with the fanfic.
Chapter 16, The Calm Before the Storm. A bit over a week passed since the Battle of Amigakure. Despite Might Guy's death, life returned to normal for the former Konoha prisoners once they returned to the village. Might Guy wasn't the first shinobi to die, and he wasn't going to be the last either. That was a ninja's life. They all knew what they had signed up for. They understood that before going out on a high-rank mission there was a chance that they might not come back. Amigakure didn't make a huge deal out of Might Guy's death, but Tsunade still held a symbolic funeral for him. Naruto's Raisin Shuriken had reduced Guy's body to atoms, so they didn't even have a corpse to bury, but Guy's team and his close friends and acquaintances gathered to honor his name and bring a flower to his tombstone. After the funeral, everyone returned to their duties. Nonetheless, even though things seemed to have come back to normal, the people who had gone through this ordeal were not left without scars. Kakashi and Yamato went back to ANBU. Kakashi, in particular, couldn't imagine ever picking another team of genins again after seeing how his Team 7 had turned out. Reading porn and throwing himself from one mission to another were the only methods he knew to distract himself from his guilt. Not only was he blaming himself for how Naruto and Sasuke ended up deserting the village, but he was also beating himself over the fact that he had not led his comrades to victory in the S-rank mission to Amigakure. On top of it all, his only friend and rival was now dead too. Hyuga Neji was a Jonin himself, and Tenten was a Chunin too. It wasn't like they needed to be mentored by a Jonin anymore, and, truth be told, while they were saddened by their sensei's untimely death, at the end of the day, the two of them hadn't been particularly close to him. As for Sakura, she went back to working in the hospital. The girl looked like a shade of her former self. Not only had the love of her life been captured and was awaiting trial, but Naruto had deserted Konoha and even killed one of his former comrades. She was in shambles. Alas, while most of them gradually moved on with their lives, there was one person who looked like they weren't going to move on anytime soon. Even a week after Guy's death, Rock Lee still went to visit his grave every day. Might Guy had been more than just a sensei for him, he had been almost like a father. Everything that he was in the present, he owed to his sensei. The poor boy was inconsolable. Never thought I'd see myself wearing this cloak one day, Naruto said as he looked at his reflection in the mirror. If his normal clothes as a Rain Jonin were plain and basic, the black cloak with red clouds on it was nothing if not eye-catching. You don't have to wear it if it makes you uncomfortable, Conan said. She sounded hesitant. Naruto took a long look at himself, not saying anything for a while. For the longest time, I've dreaded the sight of this cloak. The Akatsuki was trying to hunt my kind down. Gaara even lost his life after Deidara captured him. When Conan put her hands on the collar of his cloak, trying to take it off him, he stopped her. But I know what it means for you, he said as he placed his hands on top of hers. You don't have to force yourself to do anything, Conan said firmly. He smiled. I know that. But I want to do it for you. From the very moment she took him in, Conan had tried to build a relationship of equals between the two of them. While she was doing her best to guide him and advise him when it came to making big decisions, she had never dismissed his opinion and always tried to get him involved in the village's affairs and other things of importance. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. There isn't any expression that describes Akatsuki better than that, Conan said, looking down at his chest. For the sake of peace, we did terrible things. Our goal had been to create peace, but in the process, we started a war. Many people lost their lives at our hands. I am just as guilty of it as the rest of my former teammates. Raising her head, her orange eyes peered into his as she said, instead of bringing peace, we became a symbol of terror. That's not how I want Yahiko's and Nagato's legacy to be remembered. I understand it won't be easy to change people's views of us after everything we've done, but I have to try. But you have no obligation to go through with this. These are my sins to bear, not yours. I am more than Dash. What are you saying? Of course I won't let you do it alone. Naruto said firmly, not leaving any room for debate. He cupped her face with his hands, greatly enjoying seeing the way she leaned into his touch as he caressed her. Those warm amber eyes and her short blue hair left him mesmerized. She was so pretty that just looking at her was enough to make his heartbeat quicken. Wherever my lady goes, I will be there too. We're in this together. We've made a promise, have we not? Yes, she said, closing her eyes when he pressed a gentle kiss on her forehead. Besides, what better way to show the world that the Akatsuki has changed than by having an actual Jinchuriki wear the cloak? She smiled at that, and for a few moments, they looked like they were only a moment away from starting to kiss each other. But they didn't let themselves get swept up in their feelings because there was a very important task ahead of them that day. Is that Lord Pain? It can't be. I know him, he's Uzumaki Naruto. They call him the hero of the leaf abroad. Then why is he wearing the Amigakure headband? You haven't heard? Lady Conan brought him here. The two of them fought against the Konoha shinobi that infiltrated the village a few weeks ago and captured them all. Konoha did what? I was stationed at the border with Suna. Damn, I missed out on so many things. Nearly 5,000 shinobi and kunoichi were standing next to each other on the shore of the lake of Amigakure, outside the village. The land of rain was not a great nation, but among the smaller hidden villages, it was the most populous. It was remarkable for a country as small as Rain, sandwiched between three great powers, and after being ravaged by decades of war to have such a high number of shinobi. That being said, while the number of shinobi was high, Amigakure itself was a small village. It couldn't accommodate all of them together with the civilian population needed to support the shinobi as well. Half of those 5,000 ninjas were spread throughout the rest of the country in various outposts and other villages in the land of rain or patrolling the border. Therefore, not few were those among them who were unfamiliar with the details regarding the events that had transpired over the course of the past few months. Their murmurs stopped when a swarm of paper butterflies filled the sky above them and the angel of Amigakure materialized above them, flying. At the sight of her, whether they were genin, chunin, or jonin, the 5,000 shinobi and kunoichi all brought a hand to their chests and bowed. The amount of fear, awe, and reverence that the Rain Ninja held for Pain and Konan could not be easily expressed in words. I have gathered you today for the sake of sharing with all of you three very important news. Although she was speaking in her usual quiet, breathy tone, somehow, her voice traveled perfectly in the ears of all the people present there. This is Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox, and Lord Pain's successor. Her words elicited loud gasps from the shinobi and kunoichi below her. However, at that moment, while they were all looking at him, Naruto made use of Deva Path's ability to levitate and fly in the air until he was on the same level as Conan. His ringed, purple eyes, the Akatsuki cloak, and the fact that he was flying left no doubts whatsoever about his identity. Lord Pain is no longer walking among us. But he did not leave us alone and unprotected. He had passed on his gift to Uzumaki Naruto. He had given him his eyes, the eyes of God. Amigakure is not weak. Amigakure has not become vulnerable. We are strong. We endure, and, ultimately, we pay back to our enemies tenfold. As the ninja below them started roaring in approval, Conan raised a hand to silence them. From today onwards, we will no longer isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. Now, we have the power to protect ourselves. Even if Iwa, Konoha, or Suna were to attack us again, we have the strength to push them back. And proof of that is that we killed the Tsuchikage no less than a week ago. Cries of shock and wonder came from the Rain Ninja. Anoki was a legendary shinobi, and his fearsome bloodline limit had left a deep impression on them. They were having a hard time believing it, especially after finding out that their lord, their god, was dead. The Tsuchikage and a group of over 100 elite IWA ninja lost their lives at the hands of Uzumaki Naruto. We have shown the world that we are strong, and we will continue to do so from now on. Tomorrow, I will select 1,000 from among you. Tomorrow, we occupy the land of rivers. The air and the ground quaked with Rain Ninja's cheers. If you're going to kill me, just do it already. Hey, for how long are you going to keep me like this? For the first few days after getting imprisoned, Uchiha Sasuke was calm, quiet, and aloof. But, as days turned into a week, he grew increasingly restless. His chakra was sealed, and a metallic pillory was cuffing his wrists and keeping his hands apart, preventing him from even attempting to make any hand seals. Trapped in an underground cell with no windows and only a tiny opening in its thick metallic door, Sasuke was quickly reaching the end of his limits. Hey! Is someone out there? Answer me, hey! However, his yells were not met with an answer. Not for the first time that day, he banged with the pillory around his wrists against the door, a loud metallic clang ringing out from their collision. Isolated in a stinky and tiny underground cell, living in a state of semi-permanent hunger and darkness, having no contact with any human beings, and being forced to sleep on the cold and humid floor were taking their toll on him. When his pleas and requests didn't yield any results, he resorted to screaming threats and swearing to massacre everyone. But he was still ignored all the same. Slowly, but steadily, the last Uchiha was getting desperate. Exhausted from all his screaming and banging against the door, Sasuke let himself slide down against the wall. With his cuffed hands resting on his knees, he laid his forehead on the metallic pillory and closed his eyes. Oh ho ho! Is my sight betraying me? Is the mighty Uchiha Sasuke crying? At the sound of that obnoxious laughter and annoying voice, Sasuke instantly jumped up to his feet and instinctively backed away to the corner of the cell. A Venus trap-like plant person came out of the ground. It was impossible for Sasuke not to recognize him. Zetsu. How the hell did you get in here? Sasuke said in surprise. As if Konoha's trifling barrier jutsu and cheap traps could stop me. The sensors don't even know we're here. He. Leaving aside the strange appearance and behavior of the bizarre plant-like person, Sasuke couldn't think of anyone he would have been happier to see in his current predicament. Then, are you here to take me out, maybe? It was kinda amusing to watch you sob. Yes. But, before we take you out, I need your word that you will obey my orders. Yes, whatever you say, just break these cuffs and let's go. I'm surprised they didn't execute me on the spot when they captured me. Black Zetsu scoffed. They'd have to be insane to do that. What do you mean? There is no way they would kill an asset as valuable as you. Not only are you the last of the Uchiha, but you also have the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. No village leader in their right mind would simply sentence you to death. Besides, you haven't done anything to harm Konoha while you were a Nuke-nin. Now that Black Zetsu mentioned it, Sasuke could see it too. Although he had deserted the village, in reality, he hadn't done anything to directly harm Konoha. If anything, he had done Konoha a great service by killing Orochimaru. If you just wait a few more days, they'll come to you with an offer. You could have a new life here if you so desired. You would even have women lined up for you to rebuild the Uchiha clan. Your current living conditions aren't great because they're trying to soften you up so you'll be easier to negotiate with. As the saying goes, you're not you when you're hungry, White Zetsu cackled. White Zetsu is a cretin most of the time, but he's right now. They would definitely give you a second chance if you were willing to cooperate with them and dash. Screw that. Sasuke screamed, cutting Black Zetsu mid-sentence. You'd think I'd be willing to go back to this village and play to their tune? After how they massacred my people? After how they manipulated my brother? I'd rather they kill me now. He was so angry that, at the end of his outburst, he started panting in exertion. Having been starved for so many days, his physical condition had reached rock bottom. He couldn't wait to get out of that hole. What a shame. You could have gotten a harem of your own if dash. Read the room and be quiet for once, you imbecile. Take me out of here, Sasuke said. Help me destroy the hidden leaf and, in turn, I will help you with whatever you want after I have my vengeance. I knew we were on the same page. Perfect. We have a deal. With a chop of Zetsu's hand, the metallic pillory was sliced in half, freeing Sasuke's wrists. Then, grabbing a hold of his arm, Zetsu and Sasuke started sinking into the ground. A downward punch to the head made Killer Bee's body break through the floor and crash into the floor a level below theirs. Raikage-sama, isn't this too much? Mabui tried to defuse the situation. Killer Bee got up from the floor with no difficulty and brushed the dust off his clothes. That punch was so strong that it would have killed others on the spot, but he appeared to be unharmed, save for a bruise the size of an apple on top of his head. B. Do you have any idea how worried we have all been? We've even started a war for your sake, but what have you been doing in the meantime? Huh, Why you so mad, big bro? Raikage looked like he was going to explode. You irresponsible dipshit. I'm going to dash. He was so incensed that he couldn't even speak coherently. I sent word of my survival, haven't I? Killer Bee said. His instincts were telling him that if he were to start rapping at that moment, the Raikage might really kick his shit in. Violently, having taken a few seconds to regain his calm, the Raikage asked, "Then, what made you finally decide to come back to the village?" "It's about the Akatsuki." "What about them?" "The Akatsuki were destroyed by Konoha and AIM. Uzumaki Naruto killed Uchiha Madara, and Uchiha Sasuke was captured by the Hokage. They're no longer a threat." "That's news to me," Killer Bee said. He had been living mostly off-grid for the past few weeks in order to not get found by his village, so he wasn't up to date with the most recent events. "But still, I was attacked by the monster of the mist only a few days ago and almost got captured for real this time. It took me turning into the full form of Hachibi to defeat him. And he was wearing the Akatsuki cloak." Now that Killer Bee mentioned it and now that he was significantly calmer than before, Raikage finally noticed the peculiar sword strapped to Killer Bee's back. "Is that his sword?" "Yes. It's Samahata, one of the 7 swords of the mist. But, more importantly, if Akatsuki is finished, where are all the tailed beasts that have been captured? Don't Bijou need several years to reform after dying?" Mabui asked. "That's the thing, they didn't die. They were extracted from the Jinchuriki." "So what happened with the Bijou?" said Killer Bee. "Do you know something, Bee?" Killer Bee pushed his sunglasses with his finger before saying, "When I gave Uchiha Sasuke the slip with my octopus leg clone jutsu, they took my clone into a hidden place, in a cave. The last thing my clone saw before being dispelled was an enormous, demonic-looking statue with 9 eyes. They cast a jutsu that siphoned my clone's chakra into the statue." As the Raikage became silent, Killer Bee continued. 7 of the statue's 9 eyes were open. The Akatsuki had captured the first 7 Bijou up until that moment. This is only my speculation so far, but I believe that the gigantic statue is a weapon that gets powered by the Bijou's chakra. And once all the 9 eyes open, imagine having the power of all 9 Bijou at their beck and call. Why did you withhold such important information for so long? God damn it, Bee. Raikage screamed, and the desk next to him was smashed into smithereens from his fist. Mabui, prepare for me another desk and get someone to fix that hole in the floor. Bee, bring Darui here. We have much to discuss. I don't know who exactly is the one who controls that statue that you spoke of, but that's too much power in the hands of any village, let alone a terrorist organization. The regiment of shinobi that Conan took to the land of rivers was mostly not needed. She and Naruto could have settled everything by themselves, but parading around 1,000 shinobi had its fair share of use as well. Seeing such a large number of shinobi gathered in one place was a much more intimidating sight than seeing only 2 nins, be they S rank or not. At the very least, the civilian population would never have any thoughts about starting some sort of rebellion and, on the other side, they would also be more willing to accept the new rule for the sake of the protection that Hidden Rain would bestow upon them. The few missing nins who had ambitions of occupying the land of rain like some sort of local warlords scurried away with their tails between their legs. It was one thing for them to face off against the civilians armed with pitchforks and a completely different matter to oppose an entire hidden village, especially one with a reputation as bad as Amigakure. Hidden Rain ninjas were notorious for their assassination skills. In the end, nothing much was going to change for the average Land of Rivers citizens in the short term. The farmers, the merchants, and so on and so forth would continue their daily lives just like before. However, while the average citizens would not experience radical changes overnight in their daily lives, it was the opposite for the people who used to work for the Land of Rivers government under the rule of the deceased daimyo. Taxes on land, profit, and customs duty would go to Amigakure now. For a country as small as the Land of Rain, that was an immense boon. But the biggest reason Conan decided to risk creating tensions with their neighboring countries by annexing the Land of Rivers was that Hidden Rain would gain access to the ocean. Considering the large amount of rice and fish products that the Land of Rain produced every season, the trading possibilities were endless. Seeing Conan discuss politics and economy with the Land of Rivers representatives and some of her advisors, Naruto felt completely out of his depth. It cemented in his mind the idea that he wouldn't be a good leader for a village. No wonder Ero-Sennin repeatedly turned down the Hokage position. It took much more than strength to be a good leader for a village. Having strength was merely the starting line. Understanding the economy, politics, and diplomacy was probably even more important. He chuckled at the thought that he had wanted to become the Hokage. Until recently, he had not even known the general topography of the countries surrounding the Land of Fire. For example, he hadn't known that one could reach the ocean by going down the river draining the lake of Amigakure. He lacked too much essential knowledge. As it was right now, he had nothing to help her with. I'm only good at kicking ass. He had thought about learning other things, but if his failed attempt at learning Fuinjutsu was anything to go by, he was just not suited for that sort of stuff. He wasn't good at studying. He couldn't muster the will and motivation to do it. He let out a sigh. Humans weren't perfect. Everyone had something they were good at and something they sucked at. In the end, one can't have it all. So I'll just focus on what I can do. As the administrative tasks were in Conan's care, he had the job of protecting his village. Right, she told me there used to be weapons manufacturers in this country, he remembered. Takumi Village's crafters were renowned worldwide for their skill in making ninja tools and weapons. Although the decade-long peace that followed after the Third Ninja War forced them to put their skills to use in another field, it wasn't like they had forgotten what had brought them to the dance in the first place. If the prophecy of the Great Elder Toad is true, then this peace we still have now is shaky at best. At this point, he had no doubts that the Elder Toad's prophecy was the real thing. The first prophecy was true. Uchiha Obito and Sasuke, the old enemy, ambushed us at the summit with Tsunade in the Land of Rivers. The second was true as well. I got the key to the seal, and I obtained Kurama's power. Chances are that war will start soon. It could be over a month, it could be over a year, or it could be after 10 years. He didn't know when it was, but he wanted to be prepared for it. With the power of the Rinnegan and that of Kurama added to his own skills, Naruto had no doubts or fears regarding his own fate. Should a war start, he was confident that nobody would be able to kill him. However, there was more to winning a war than just surviving. Furthermore, while he and Conan could keep themselves safe, they also had a village to protect. Bearing those thoughts in mind, he wanted to do anything he could to increase the chances of Hidden Rain going through the war with minimal casualties. Making use of the Takumi village's craftsmen to create ninja tools for his village was just one of the things he was planning on doing. I wonder, will it help them if I let them study my Azura path? The abilities of the Azura path looked like futuristic technology in his eyes. Rockets, chakra cannons, chainsaw blades, and so on and so forth. He hoped that the craftsman could draw inspiration from his Rinnegan abilities and make stronger ninja tools and weapons for the Hidden Rain. Chapter 17, Dark Clouds. Ah, this place brings back some memories I forgot I had, Naruto said in wonder as he looked down at the small mining town. Have you been here before? Conan asked. Yes, a few years ago. It wasn't long after Sasuke defected from the village. I think I was 13 or 14. We had a mission to remove a criminal family who took over this town. Raiga, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, was here too. As the two of them flew above the town, Naruto narrated to her the story of Raiga and Ranmaru, making her break into soft laughter more than once. It's surprising to hear that a handful of genins managed to defeat one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, she said. Looking back, he wasn't that strong. He was an amateur at wielding twin swords. What was annoying about him was that his swords allowed him to control natural lightning. I think he was the weakest of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. At least among the ones I've met. Due to how busy Conan had been after the Land of Rain occupied the Land of Rivers, the two of them had not spent much time together over the past 2 weeks. While the military matters were settled within 3 days, the bureaucratic ones were far more troublesome and time-consuming. Therefore, it was only now, after the dust had settled somewhat, that they were finally able to catch up and spend some much-needed time together. Looks like you're getting increasingly familiar with your Deva Path abilities, she said as they momentarily stopped flying and landed on one of the many rocky formations of the gorge. I've gotten better at it but can't use my flight in combat yet. It's difficult to make sharp turns or suddenly increase my altitude. He didn't remember his fight against Pain's Deva Path because Kyuubi had made him berserk back then, but, from what the fox had told him, Nagato had been a master at controlling the attractive and repulsive forces of his Rinnegan, allowing him to fly with incredible speed and dexterity to avoid his attacks. He hadn't reached Nagato's level of mastery just yet, but he was getting there, all in due time. If my memory serves me well, you have mastered the abilities of the Rinnegan much faster than Nagato. I have no doubt you will reach his level soon. He grinned at her words. He would never tire of hearing how much faith and confidence she had in him. Taking her hand in his, he started swinging their hands lightly. His happiness was so pure and radiant that it was almost childlike. You're in a great mood today, can you blame me? We're finally out on a date. She chuckled at him, his grin infecting her with his good mood too. This isn't a date, I've come here with business, you know. Oh, come on. The gold mine isn't going anywhere. Give me only 2 hours of your time. Let's have some fun, he said and, still holding her hand, he dragged her after him and he jumped off the cliffs surrounding Katabami Town. Good grief, she said, letting out a long, suffering sigh, but she couldn't even get mad at his exuberance. What is this place? This, my lady, is the second best restaurant in the world, he said with an air of great importance. Let me guess, the first would be a Chiraku. She asked as if he hadn't told her about his love for ramen several dozen times before. He laughed, not missing the teasing tone in her voice. Trust me, you're going to love this. Conan adopted an unsure expression on her face as she looked at the rather shabby appearance of the restaurant, but she decided not to think too much about it. Naruto had never given her any reason to distrust him. As they entered the small restaurant, the clerk's voice welcomed them merrily. Hello, and welcome to the Curry of Dash. But the boy suddenly stopped his greeting midway startled. Naruto-san? Is that really you? Ranmaru, you haven't forgotten me. Naruto also exclaimed happily, how could I? But it's been so long, and you've changed so much. If not for my special abilities, I might not have recognized you. You're one to talk. You've grown like a weed. Look at yourself, you're almost as tall as me now. The malnourished, gloomy, and depressed little boy was nowhere to be seen. Ranmaru was 14 years old now and he looked like a handsome and healthy teenager. By the way, this is my girlfriend, Shizuka. Shizuka, this is Ranmaru. If Conan was surprised by his lie about her name, she didn't let it show on her face. It's nice to meet you, she said and smiled slightly, going with the flow. And nice to meet you too, the boy said, his cheeks quickly becoming red. He had never seen a woman as pretty as her in his entire life. Picking up on Ranmaru's sudden shyness, Naruto came to his rescue. What about Oba-san and Karasher? How are they doing? Still visibly flustered by Conan's presence, the boy did his best to avoid looking in her direction as he said, Oba-san passed away last year. Sorry to hear that. She was very old. But I'm glad it was peaceful, she passed away in her sleep. As for Karashianai-san, he went to restock our supplies of rice. After the land of rain occupied our country, some things unexpectedly got better. Can you believe it, really now? Naruto asked and exchanged a look with Conan. Yes, really. Karashianai-san told me that rice and fish are now almost 30% cheaper than before. I heard some of our customers saying that the land of rain has an abundance of food, so now that the Lady of Amigakure has occupied our country, we're benefiting from that too. How is that by the way? How do you feel about the land of rain taking over? Conan asked. The boy scratched his cheek with his hand and shrugged his shoulders as he said, I don't know much about the country's affairs, so I'm not sure what to say. But most of the people in our town are hopeful about it. The price of food going down is an incredible boon and, lately, the rogue ninjas who used to wreak havoc everywhere have disappeared too. All we can do is hope that these changes aren't temporary. I see. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I hope the land of rivers will get better after the change in leadership. I wish I could have seen Karasher too if possible, but it is what it is. You could always visit us again, couldn't you? Ranmaru said hopefully. Well, if you offer to treat us to a few portions of curry for free, I might consider it, Naruto said jokingly. You don't ever have to pay us here, the boy said categorically. You saved everyone in this town from Raiga. The least I could do is treat our hero to a meal. Okay, I hope you don't go back on your word, the blonde laughed. I won't, I promise. Now, how about I serve you some curry? Karashi and Isan developed an even richer and tastier curry than before. Really? Naruto said in excitement. Then, please make for us 2 portions. Alrighty. I'll be back in 10 minutes. As he led Konan towards a table and they took a sit across each other, Naruto said, all the while grinning from one ear to another, I promise you that you've never eaten anything like this before in your whole life. That's some really high praise. If I didn't know any better, I'd be tempted to think you like this local curry even more than ramen. Okay, let's not exaggerate now, Naruto said seriously, as if that was a line that should never be crossed. What's with the new name? And who is Shizuka? What are you not telling me, huh? Naruto laughed awkwardly, trying to avoid answering, but, as Konan stood up slightly and leaned over the table, he found himself unable to ignore her persistent look. It was just a name that popped into my head at that time. Didn't want to scare Ranmaru by telling him you're Lady Konan, the leader of rain and rivers. Did you now? Honest. Shizuka was just a girl who tried to kill me a year or 2 ago. I've never seen her since. I'd never go behind your back with someone else, I swear. You're the only one dash. But as the corners of her lips curled into a smirk, he realized that she was teasing him, so he stopped rambling. Do continue. I very much enjoy hearing you proclaim your adoration for me. Not cool, Konan, not cool. It's Shizuka, dummy, right? Shizuka, he said, fake coughing into his fist in an attempt to hide his embarrassment. Soon, Ranmaru returned from the kitchen with 2 plates filled to the brim with curry. Enjoy your meal. Thanks. Thank you. But after the boy left, Konan threw a long glance at the food and then at Naruto. The rice looked ordinary, but the curry on top of it had a violently red color. The steam coming off from it was actually distorting the air above the plate. Well, what are you waiting for? Go on, dig in. Naruto said, putting his elbows on the table as he watched her, giving her his full attention. At his egging, she grabbed the spoon and took a small portion of rice and curry, bringing it slowly to her lips. But as the spoon got closer to her mouth, her hands started shaking outside of her control. She had been a kunoichi for 2 decades already, and she had been through many life and death battles in her past. All shinobi and kunoichi who had lived on the battlefield for so long developed a sort of sixth sense. Their instincts were as sharp as those of a beast, they could tell when their life was being endangered. At that moment, the survival instincts that Konan had honed on the battlefield over the course of 20 years were warning her that something terrible was about to happen. But, as she raised her head to look at her boyfriend, Konan melted at the expectant look on his face. Ah, he's adorable. She couldn't find the strength in her heart to break his expectations. The thought of seeing his expression of enthusiasm turn into one of disappointment was unbearable. Fighting against her instincts that were screaming danger at her, Konan took a deep breath and brought the spoon to her mouth, taking in all contents in one go. She didn't even try to chew it or taste it, she swallowed everything right away. An evil grin crept up on Naruto's face when he saw her bringing the spoon to her mouth. As she swallowed that spoonful of curry of life, Konan froze like a statue and dropped the spoon from her hand. Her normally pale face suddenly turned as red as lava. 1 second later, her eyes rolled in the back of her head, and she collapsed on her side like a sack of potatoes, unconscious, foaming at the mouth. Wahaha! He was laughing uproariously. The more he thought about how her face had turned a burning red, the harder his side started hurting. She fainted. Ahaha! He couldn't stop laughing. He had never pranked Konan before, so, despite the signs she had subconsciously picked up that something was wrong, she went ahead and ate the curry as he had told her. She had never suspected any foul play from him. 1 hour later. Come on, Konan, don't be mad. It was a joke. I am not mad. Kurama's senses are telling me you want to kill me now. It must be your imagination. Look at me, I'm perfectly calm. To her credit, Konan's poker face was perfect. If not for the ability that Kyuubi had shared with him to sense negative emotions, Naruto would have never been able to tell that she was actually boiling with embarrassment and a thirst for revenge deep inside. Now, I have to go back to work. We came to this town not for leisure but for the sake of checking the state of the gold mine. My subordinates are waiting for me there. Seeing Naruto let out a sad sigh, despite the mixture of embarrassment and annoyance inside of her, Conan couldn't stay angry at him. "We'll spend more time together next week, I promise. For now, we have to go, okay?" she said and pressed her lips on his cheek. Due to the fact that Amigakure had no reserves of coal, oil, or other precious resources, Conan's subordinates didn't have the expertise required to assess the state of the Katabami gold mine. As for the supervisors from the previous government of the Land of Rivers, Conan didn't trust them. They've been extracting gold from this mine for nearly a decade. How is it possible that after all these years, the townspeople still live in such poverty? Before her first visit to Katabami Town, Conan had expected a certain level of prosperity, but what greeted her were dirt and gravel roads, old houses in a state of disrepair, and thin and pale-faced people, most of them wearing rags for clothes. Greed, avarice, and corruption, that's how, she answered her own question. All the people holding management positions in the mine were fired and arrested. Now, they were awaiting trial. For the moment, all activity in the gold mine had been stopped, but it was necessary in order for her to find people that she trusted to manage it. With that being said, the closest country with ninjas who had qualifications in the mining industry was the Land of Earth. However, with AIM and IWA being on the brink of war after Naruto killed their Tsuchikage, it was impossible to hire anyone's services from there. That was the reason why nearly 2 weeks passed after AIM occupied the Land of Rivers before Conan finally got the chance to properly assess the Katabami gold mine. She had been forced to hire mining experts from the Land of Mountains, which was located rather far away from the Land of Rivers. "Greetings, Lady Conan. We have finished our inspection. According to our diagnosis jutsu, the concentration of gold in the material mined from the already existing tunnels is rather lackluster. The true deposit of gold is located much deeper. We suggest digging to a depth of at least 300 meters. What about the stability of the existing tunnels? They need consolidation. However, that can be done easily with the help of a skilled Doton user. At what depth is the water table? I'm afraid digging deeper than 30 meters may prove challenging. This is the Land of Rivers, the water table isn't far from the surface. If you wish to proceed with digging to a depth of 300 meters, you will need specialized personnel capable of dewatering the mine." As Conan became engrossed in her business talk with the mining experts from the Land of Mountains, Naruto decided to summon himself to Takumi village via the shadow clone that he had stationed there. The things they were talking about sounded like a foreign language to him, he was completely out of his depth. Therefore, he decided to do something productive with his time instead and use that small window to allow the ninja tool craftsman to study his Azura path for the sake of developing new weapons and devices that would aid the Rain Nines in the upcoming war prophesied by the Great Elder Toad. Shortly after acquiring the Rinnegan, creating shadow clones had been extremely troublesome because all clones shared their sight with him, the original. However, as time passed, he became accustomed to it. Gradually, the number of clones he could use simultaneously without suffering from sensory overload increased, and he even developed the mental ability to tune out the visuals coming from his clones. Nowadays, aside from the clones he would use in his daily training sessions, Naruto had shadow clones stationed in Amigakure, Takumi village from the Land of Rivers, and at Aim's border with the Land of Earth at all times. A few minutes after finishing her discussion with the mining experts from the Land of Mountains, Conan spread her large white paper wings and took to the air, leaving Katabami Town behind her. She flew at a leisurely pace for nearly 10 kilometers before she came to a stop and landed on the top of a cliff, at the edge of a V-shaped valley. "Come out. You can't hide from my senses." At her words, the surface of the soil at her side turned into a viscous substance, almost like a swamp, and a monster-like being jumped out from it. "What brings you here, Kisame?" Conan asked. She had recognized the technique and its user before he even revealed his appearance. It was Hoshikage Kisame's subterranean voyage jutsu. Shaking the wet mud off his clothes, Kisame changed his shark-like appearance back into one that resembled a human being more and strapped his large sword on his back. "I had a feeling I wouldn't be able to sneak up on you, but it didn't hurt to try," Kisame said, his grin revealing his razor-sharp teeth. Conan didn't share his amusement. "I won't ask again. Why did you seek me out today, so cold? And here I thought we were comrades. Akatsuki is no more. There is nothing tying us together anymore." Saying those words, Conan's face and body split like a book fluttering in the wind, filling the sky with countless paper tags. Not letting his guard down, Kisame immediately grabbed the handle of his sword and got into a fighting stance. "I didn't come to fight," he said seriously, dropping the laid-back, joking tone from before. "I came here looking for answers." As the wielder of Samahata, an S-ranked rogue nin, and a chakra powerhouse, Hashikage Kisame was not afraid of anyone. However, fighting Conan was something he wished to avoid if possible, not out of fear but due to how time-consuming and wasteful such an endeavor was. Unless he ambushed her when she didn't expect it, which he had already failed, there was virtually no way for him to harm her due to one very simple reason: she could fly and her paper kawarimi made her almost untouchable as long as she had chakra. Meanwhile, seeing as he was grounded, he would become little more than a target for her paper projectiles and explosives. Conan's skill set was a bad match for his. "And what makes you think I'd give you any answers? Look, we can either talk it out, or we can fight it out. It's your choice. I know you aren't weak because you're the one who forced Sasori to join the Akatsuki. But they don't call me the tailed beast for no reason. Your flying ability is troublesome to deal with, but you don't have a surefire way of hurting me either. Our fight is bound to become a battle of attrition, and I know that neither of us wants that now." Conan and Kisame were locked in a staring contest for 10 very long seconds. "I came bearing important information as well. Crucial information. I won't ask for answers without offering anything in exchange." When he added those words, Conan absorbed the paper tags filling the sky back into her body and let herself float down on the ground. Kisame strapped his sword on his back again and relaxed his stance too. "What happened to Uchiha Madara? I heard he was killed, but I find it hard to believe. That wasn't the real Madara. It was an imposter. He died at the hands of Uzumaki Naruto." "So what the Raikage said was true," Kisame murmured, seemingly completely indifferent to hearing the fact that the deceased Tobi wasn't who he had claimed to be. "I answered your question. Now it's my turn to ask you something. How did you come into contact with the Raikage?" asked Conan. "After Uchiha Sasuke got duped by the Hachibi Jinchuriki, I was tasked to capture him myself. It took me a while to track him down, and when I did, he proved to be stronger than I anticipated. Even without his bijou, he wasn't much weaker than a Kage. Still, I had the upper hand up until the moment when he transformed into the full form of the eight-tailed demon beast. At that point, my options were to either flee or die. But I chose a third option. When he fired a tailed beast bomb in my direction, I hid inside my sword, Samahata, and faked my death. Killer Bee took my blade with him to Kumo as a trophy, not knowing that I was still alive, watching and listening to everything around us. That new development caught Conan's attention. "It's my turn now. What is happening with the bijou right now? What do you plan on doing with the demonic statue of the outer path? And what of the Eye of the Moon plan?" That last question made Conan narrow her eyes at him. "Who told you about the infinite Tsukimi plan?" "I knew about it from the very beginning," Kisame said, shrugging. "I hate being lied to, used, and manipulated. Therefore, before joining the Akatsuki, I demanded that Tobi told me the truth if he wanted my loyalty. The full truth. So he showed me his face and divulged to me his real identity. I've known from the start that he wasn't the real Madara. But I kept his secret because I agreed with his plan. So tell me, Conan, is this still your goal? Do you still wish to bring the infinite Tsukimi plan to fruition?" "The Eye of the Moon plan was never our end game. Pain and I have never trusted Obito," she said coldly. "We never intended to go through with that madness. Our plan was to control the full-powered Geto Mazo and inflict pain upon those who desired war until they all learned what suffering feels like. Until they learned to understand one another. We used Obito in the same way he used us. Our loyalty was never to him but to the ideals of the Akatsuki, the organization that we had created." Conan's answer made Kisame grit his sharp teeth. "This word is truly full of lies and deception. You're saying that the Eye of the Moon plan is madness, but how is what Pain desired any different? The difference is that our peace would have been real, a peace based on people understanding each other's suffering and pain. The Eye of the Moon plan won't bring real peace. It would be just an illusion, a genjutsu." For a moment, the two of them sank into silence, their conversation coming to a lull. "You said you have valuable intel for me, crucial information. So far, none of the things you told me were particularly intriguing. Kisame was a man of his word, so, despite the deep disappointment he felt at Conan's answer regarding the Eye of the Moon plan, he didn't back out of their deal. The Eight Tails Jinchuriki revealed to the Raikage the fact that the bijou that the Akatsuki had captured are all stored inside a statue, the Geto Mazo. They're already suspecting that it's a weapon. So far, they haven't found out who owns that statue, but all clues indicate that you, who used to be Pain's right hand, should know how to control it. You have a target on your back now, Conan. 3 out of the 5 great nations have set their eyes on you now. Considering that the Hidden Rain and the Hidden Leaf had recently signed a pact of non-aggression and a trading agreement, and the fact that Suna and Konoha had a strong alliance, it was clear to Conan who were the 3 powers targeting her now: Iwagakure, Kyomogakure, and Kirigakure. If I said it was nice to see you again, I would be lying. Farewell, Conan. Where are you going now? She asked, her eyes narrowing at him again. To the other Akatsuki, of course. What other Akatsuki? I told you, Akatsuki is no more. Oh, you haven't heard? Zetsu had broken Uchiha Sasuke out of Konoha's prison. They are still calling themselves Akatsuki, and they offered me to join them, but, as I said, I hate being lied to and manipulated. And my instincts are telling me that Zetsu is hiding things from me. I cannot trust him. I had hoped that you would be willing to continue with Obito's Eye of the Moon plan, that's why I contacted you. I would much rather join your side instead of his. However, your refusal gives me no other choice but to go back to them. The infinite Tsukuyomi is the only way through which peace could ever be achieved in our world. But, as Kisame turned around to leave, the air was suddenly swarmed with a myriad of paper tags, blocking his way. Are you really going to do this? Kisame said, unsheathing Samahata from its bandages. Taking a page out of your book, you're giving me no other choice, Kisame, Conan said calmly. How could I possibly let you go after you told me that you're planning on joining my enemy? She raised her hand at him and clenched it into a fist, triggering a chain of explosions all around him. But, at the same time, Kisame also shouted, Suetun, Bakusue Shoha. Just as the exploding tags mixed with her papers were triggered, a massive torrent of water poured out of Kisame's mouth, creating a gigantic tsunami wave seemingly out of thin air and dousing all the exploding tags in the surroundings. Chapter 18, Letter. Previous chapter. She raised her hand at him and clenched it into a fist, triggering a chain of explosions all around him. But, at the same time, Kisame also shouted, Suetun, Bakusue Shoha. Just as the exploding tags mixed with her papers were triggered, a massive torrent of water poured out of Kisame's mouth, creating a gigantic tsunami wave seemingly out of thin air and dousing all the exploding tags in the surroundings. He truly has a stupidly enormous amount of chakra, Conan was forced to acknowledge when she saw the colossal amount of water that the shark man had conjured. Exploding water colliding wave, the technique truly lived up to its name. It was as if a mythical flood had been summoned to earth. The large, V-shaped canyon was submerged under an ocean of water, crushing and drowning all the animals and birds underneath. Conan immediately spread out her large paper wings and took to the air, avoiding the violent torrents of water below. The water under Kisame's feet started rising like a pillar, lifting him in the air rapidly and throwing him towards the flying Conan above. However, his charge was met by a barrage of exploding tags. The powerful explosion blasted him back, but fortunately, he had shielded himself against the brunt of it with the large sword before he was smashed back into the water. Swimming back to the surface, Kisame quickly went through a series of hand seals and slapped his hands on the surface of the water. Over 100 enormous water tendrils shot up like the tentacles of a gigantic octopus, all aiming at Conan above. But they hit nothing but empty air because Conan's body dispersed into countless tiny butterflies, making it impossible for them to hit her. That works just fine with me, Kisame said with a smirk and dove back into the water. Merging together with Samahata, he started swimming away faster than some shinobi could run on land. From the start, his intention was to slip away, not to have a battle with Conan. I've been told that she and the Kyubi Jinchuriki are inseparable these days. That means he must be somewhere in the vicinity. I can't waste too much time here. Considering that Uzumaki Naruto had defeated Pain and now even had his Rinnegan, Kisame didn't like his chances in a scenario where he had to face both Naruto and Conan at the same time. swimming away at a speed that put real sharks to shame. He didn't notice before it was too late that the mass of water ahead of him had been filled with dozens of sealing tags. Shit, due to his high momentum, he couldn't stop right away. His eyes widened as a purple cloud burst forth from the paper tags, tainting the water like a curtain of death. Poison, he thought, alarmed as he performed a frantic series of hand seals. Suetun, Misurapa. A powerful jet of water was expelled from his mouth, pushing away the tainted water mere moments before it was about to engulf him. Not wasting a second longer, Kisame swam upwards as if there was a demon on his tail and jumped out of the water like a bullet. Since when did she start using poison? Kisame and Conan had been colleagues in the Akatsuki for years, so he was familiar with her skill set and special abilities. During their entire tenure before Pain's death, he had not seen her use a poison attack even once. Poison was Sasori's thing, not hers. He wasn't allowed to ponder and strategize in peace for long because Conan had already materialized her body again by the time he came out of the water and aimed her paper wings in his direction, hurling a deadly rain of paper projectiles at him. A wall of water rose in front of him, but even that jutsu wasn't enough to fully stop the paper senbons. He was stabbed all over his arms and legs. Luckily, he had protected his torso with the large body of the shark-like sword, but those were only flesh wounds. Making a one-handed ram seal, Kisame said, Suetun, Kirigakure no Jutsu. A thick curtain of mist blanketed the entire area, obscuring him from view. To his surprise, Conan formed a bird seal with her hands and took a deep breath. Futon, great breakthrough. 1. As the powerful gale of wind blasted the curtain of mist away, Conan's inexpressive face was marred by a frown at the sight of the 5 identical shark men running in completely different directions. He had cast a water clone technique while taking advantage of the cover provided by the mist he had summoned. You won't escape, she said in conviction as 4 paper clones appeared next to her. This isn't working, Kisame thought, frustration starting to bubble within him as Conan's paper clone easily caught up to him and his clones, dispelling them with a rain of paper projectiles from above and forcing him to cast a water wall technique to defend himself again, thus thwarting his escape. Her flight is faster than my swimming speed, and she can also turn the water into a minefield with her poison and exploding tags. It looks like escaping quickly is no longer an option for me. Now that he had reached that conclusion, he decided to stop holding back and fight her at his full power. I don't know where the Kyubi Jinchuriki is now. I have to kill her before he gets back. The sooner I kill her, the better. Resolved to focus on killing her instead of escaping now, Kisame's hands became a blur. Suetun, 1,000 hungry sharks. The mass of water under his feet trembled as dozens upon dozens of water sharks burst out of the water in an ending stream, filling the sky with their numbers. Her wings beat the air powerfully as she performed all sorts of acrobatic maneuvers to dodge the swarm of countless shark attacks, but even with her remarkable dexterity in the air, she couldn't avoid them all. In the end, she was cornered. Left with no other choice, she was forced to disperse her body into a swarm of paper sheets again to prevent the sharks from ripping her to shreds. That game of tag between her and the hundreds of water sharks controlled by Kisame continued for 5 very long minutes. Over 100 sharks had perished under the attacks of her paper weapons, but she had also been forced to disperse her body into paper sheets many times, thus draining a significant portion of her chakra in the process. This technique is unending. At this rate, I will exhaust myself long before I manage to destroy all his sharks. Bearing that thought in mind, Conan decided to go all out and annihilate all the sharks in one big attack. Her body turned into a myriad of paper sheets again to evade 2 sharks' gaping maws, but she didn't stop at only escaping this time around. The swarm of paper sheets in which she had dispersed her body started to spin in a clockwise motion. Only 3 seconds passed before the spiraling paper tags transformed into a giant vortex of wind and paper, tearing apart and shredding all the water sharks it touched, clearing the previously crowded sky. Even Kisame couldn't help but be impressed and let out a low whistle. That jutsu was formidable. But it looks like it took a lot of chakra out of you, he said, grinning when he saw how, after materializing her body again, Conan appeared to be out of breath. Although she managed to destroy one of his most powerful jutsu, that paper tornado of hers seemed to have drained a large amount of her chakra reserves. Meanwhile, Kisame's chakra reserves were still as vast as the ocean. They didn't call him the tailless-tailed beast for no reason. You're almost out of chakra now. I win, he said, and 5 more water clones rose from the water to stand next to him, all of them wielding the monster-like sword, Samahata, in their right hand. 6 pillars of water rose, lifting Kisame and his 5 clones in the air and launching them at Conan like cannonballs. As she was low on chakra now, she could no longer disperse her entire body to escape from his encirclement like before. She had cast the dance of the Shikigami dozens of times already, and that was a rather chakra-hungry technique. On top of that, the large paper tornado she cast earlier drained a massive amount from her reserves too. Therefore, her only option was to fly away and attempt to block her enemy's charge. With that in mind, Conan sacrificed her legs by turning them into paper sheets, and 6 large origami chakrams appeared at her side. With a cry of exertion, she hurled the chakrams at Kisame and his 5 clones. Such an attack was hardly an issue for the real Kisame, but his 5 water clones were split in half by the paper chakrams despite their attempt at blocking with their clone Samahata. His water clones were destroyed, but Kisame laughed out in glee as he easily swatted away the chakram coming his way with his sword and willed the water pillar underneath his feet to push him even higher in the air. Now, he was right in front of her. It had been tough for him to close the distance, but he had done it and he wasn't going to waste his chance. Lifting Samahata above his head with both hands, he slammed it down on Conan as if it were a club instead of a sword. Conan quickly transformed her left arm into a paper shield to block Kisame's vertical strike. Her paper shield technique was so formidable that it should have been able to withstand several powerful hits even from a fire release jutsu, but it crumbled like dust after Samahata smashed into it once. Surprised that the shield you sacrificed an arm to create had crumbled that easily? It's thanks to Samahata's chakra drain, Kisame said leisurely. Conan appeared to be in a deplorable state. Her legs and left arm had disappeared. Only her right arm, head, and upper torso remained. Looking at the state of her body and knowing how low on chakra she was, there was nothing to stop him from killing her now. What will you sacrifice next? Is it your right arm now? His cocky smirk was suddenly wiped from his face when his eyes fell on Conan's remaining arm and noticed that her hand was holding a ram seal. Alarm bells rang in his head when he realized that she had been holding a one-handed ram seal the entire time. You let your guard down, Conan said calmly, answering his unasked question. One of the 6 origami chakrams that she had cast earlier had not dissipated with the rest, and she had been controlling its trajectory from the start. 2. As a sharp whirring sound came from behind, Kisame abruptly turned his head and instinctively tried to twist his body. Although it was too late to evade the large chakram entirely, his attempt at dodging had saved his life for the moment at least. Instead of bisecting his body from the waist, the large origami weapon looped his right arm from the elbow. Kisame let out a hoarse scream of agony as his right arm and his sword fell into the turbid waters below. The water pillar that had been elevating him this entire time also collapsed when the loss of his arm momentarily cancelled his control over the technique. This is the end, Conan said and willed her paper chakram to deal the finishing blow. Kisame was still in midair, having yet to hit the water below, when the ringed origami weapon reached him. With his body in a free fall, weaponless, and missing an arm, the shark man could only bring his remaining arm in front of him in a desperate attempt to defend himself. But it was futile. The chakram easily severed his body in 2, from the waist. His vitality and toughness were so impressive that he didn't die right away even after being cut in half. 20 seconds after smashing into the waters below, he was still clinging to life despite having lost the entire lower half of his body. I had it in the bag, if only I hadn't. Were his last words before he breathed his last. If only you hadn't let your guard down, is what you wanted to say, right? Conan said, panting in exhaustion. But she didn't receive an answer. Kisame was dead. It was a tough battle. Although her flight advantage had given her a clear advantage in the fight, Kisame's masterful use of Suetun and his seemingly endless reserves of chakra had almost tipped the scales in his favor. Once Conan ran out of chakra, he gained the upper hand and managed to drive her into a corner. You were a powerful shinobi. At the very least, I will give you a proper burial, she muttered, paying her respects to her fallen adversary. It wasn't through strength but through her cunning and tactics that she pulled a win from the jaws of defeat. She felt compelled to give him the credit he deserved. After saying those words, Conan floated down to the top of a cliff and lay down on her back, looking absently at the clear blue sky. In hindsight, I should have summoned Naruto the moment Kisame appeared, she thought in regret. I didn't think I would almost lose to someone like Kisame. Compared to the likes of Deidara who could blow up an entire village, Kakuzu who had the fearsome Jiangu, 5 chakra natures, and 5 lives, Itachi Uchiha who could ensnare people in a genjutsu with a glance, or Sasori who could kill anyone with a single hit of his poisoned weapons, Kisame appeared to be a simple water release user with a large amount of chakra. As for his chakra drain ability, Conan had considered it a non-factor due to thinking he would never be able to get close enough to her to touch her. Considering that Kisame had been recruited by Uchiha Obito and due to the fact that she had rarely left Nagato's side, Conan had never had a chance to see the monster of the mist go all out in a battle. She knew that he was powerful, and she could feel the vast amount of chakra he possessed thanks to her sensory abilities, but she hadn't expected him to be that skilled with his water release techniques. I thought that with Hanzo's poison and my flight advantage, I would make short work of him, but his application of Suiton was transcendent. I've never seen anything like it before. A lack of information had led to an error in her calculations, which in turn almost caused her to lose her life. Laying down on the rocky ground, Conan could do little more than wait for her reserves of chakra to be replenished in order for her to regenerate the missing limbs of her paper body. I should be more cautious from now on, she thought. I can't afford to die now. Not when our dream is within reach. She had just solved her country's coal problem. She had managed to sign a trading agreement and a pact of non-aggression with Konohagakure no Sato. Amigakure had also more than doubled its territory after she occupied the land of rivers and, if that wasn't enough, she had also found a lover, a best friend, and a powerful ally in Uzumaki Naruto. Her dream of peace appeared to become clearer and more real with every passing day too. Therefore, I can't afford to die, she told herself again. I promised him that I would support him in achieving his dream of peace. Jaya. It's getting to that time of the year when ramen really hits the spot. Naruto exclaimed in bliss, his face rosy from the hot ramen he had just inhaled. A heavy sigh came from Conan. Naruto, you're very distracting. Again. I'm trying to focus on work here. Go eat ramen somewhere else. You know I can't do that. I'm never leaving your side from now on. She rested her temple on her fist, a tired expression on her face. Nobody is going to attack me in my office, in the middle of Amigakure. I can't leave anything to chance, he said stubbornly. I have to protect you. From now on I'm your bodyguard. Then act like a bodyguard, not like a nuisance. Bodyguards aren't supposed to talk to me or distract me from doing my job, but you're the one who talked to me first. He sniggered when he saw the pen in Conan's hand snap in half. It was all the more hilarious because her face was still inexpressive despite that she was fuming with annoyance. Several months passed since he began living with Conan and Amigakure, and the wounds his former village and comrades had created were mostly healed by now. He was slowly returning to his cheerful and energetic self. But, along with that, his habit of annoying the people he liked returned too. First, it was the prank that he pulled on Conan with the curry of life a few days ago, and now he was pestering her to the point where a calm and stoic person like her felt like wanting to strangle him. Okay, I promise I'll be quiet, don't kick me out, he said, making a zipping sign on his mouth when he saw her standing up from her seat. Fine. But you better keep your word. Conan said in a fed-up voice. She did not know whether to laugh or to cry. After her death battle against Kisame in the land of rivers, Naruto became exaggeratedly overprotective of her. Although she thought it was sweet on the first day after the incident that he was that concerned about her safety, she grew tired of it on the second day. Now, 3 days after the incident, she was downright exasperated. Despite the fact that she had told him not to talk to her and to stop distracting her, this time it was she who started the conversation. You don't have to treat me like a porcelain doll, you know. It's not like I'm suddenly going to break. I'm a strong kunoichi in my own right. There aren't many people who would be able to kill me. I'm not a damsel that you need to protect at every step. Remember, I'm the one who defeated Sasori and forced him to join the Akatsuki, and I killed the monster of the mist too only a few days ago. But you almost died to Kisame, Naruto muttered, not able to refute her words but also not wanting to admit that she didn't need his protection. That's how it goes in a fight between shinobi of such high caliber. Furthermore, Kisame was stronger than most Kage alive today. Was he really that powerful? He asked in surprise. I reckon he'd be able to beat anyone in a 1 versus 1 fight except for the Mizukage. He'd be able to beat Gaara and Tsunade, the Kazekage and the Hokage. Definitely, Conan said confidently. Kisame's water style counters the Kazekage's sand, and taijutsu fighters like the Hokage would be hard-pressed to deal with someone like Kisame. It goes the same for the Raikage as well. His speed would be nullified inside Kisame's water and his toughness wouldn't amount to anything if he drowned in a water prison technique. Only Mizukage would have the upper hand against Kisame. Her lava and boil bloodline limits are too powerful for mere Suetun techniques to deal with. Then, does that mean you beat most of the Kage too? It doesn't work like that, she said with a soft chuckle. Styles make fights. For example, my flight ability would give me the upper hand against someone like the Hokage and the Raikage who are close-range taijutsu fighters. They would have no way to deal with me. On the other hand, I would have a hard time against the Kazekage and his sand because he can fly, he can attack at range, and his defenses are formidable. Naruto thought about her words deeply. He had never considered such things before. He had never truly cared about elemental weaknesses and advantages or different fighting styles. He had not needed to do any of that because most of his opponents would be overwhelmed by the hundreds of shadow clones coming at them with a Rasengan in their hands. And if Kage Bunshin and Rasengan didn't cut it in a fight, Kyuubi had always been there to save the day. It brought him a sense of novelty to realize that most shinobi and kunoichi had to strategize and consider their options before engaging someone in a fight. Very few people had the leisure to just jump headfirst into fights like he used to. That being said, nothing is going to happen to me. There are barely a handful of people who could kill me in a fight. It wouldn't be much of a fight if they assassinated you while you didn't expect it, Naruto said and turned his back to her, looking at Amigakure's skyline through the tall and wide office windows. Sensing her disapproval, he added, "You said it yourself that Kumo, Iwa, and Kiri have painted a target on your back. They want their bijus back, and they would stop at nothing to get them. But he made a pause to swallow the node in his neck, you're all I have left. I can't lose you." Standing up from her seat, she walked to him and embraced him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "You won't. Next time I'm in mortal peril, I'll make sure to summon you from the start," she said, pressing a soft kiss on his cheek. "I'll summon you too if I ever get in trouble." She laughed. "You have the Rinnegan. Who would be able to push you that far?" Nagato also had the Rinnegan and he lost in the end. Nagato was crippled. His 6 paths of pain are far from being as powerful as you are now. We should also not forget that he had fought against the whole of Konohagakure before you arrived, wasting a large part of his chakra in the process. And, different from Nagato, you also have your Toad Sage mode and the Nine Tails power as well. You never know, Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. If anyone told me a year ago that I would be framed for a crime and sent to prison, that I would defect from Konoha, and that I would fall in love with a member of the Akatsuki, I would have never believed it. As she giggled at his words, he started chuckling too. Embracing each other and making light conversation like that, Conan forgot all about the stacks of paperwork on her desk. It was the arrival of a pigeon carrier that finally broke them from their little world of happiness and reminded Conan that she was supposed to be working. There were dozens of reports and documents that she had to go through before the end of the day. Opening the window to let the bird in, she grabbed the scroll tied to its legs and unfurled it to read the contents. To Conan, the leader of the land of rain and rivers. In light of the recent events, as the leader of the land of iron, I thought it would be appropriate for the samurai and the shinobi of 5 elemental nations to meet and talk about the emergence of a new power. The elemental nations are currently enjoying a fragile peace, one that could very well be broken by the appearance of a new player on the international scene. Amigakure had had no diplomatic relations with any of the surrounding countries during the past regime. That's why I believe it would be wise for us to get to know each other's goals and intentions for the future in a neutral and peaceful setting. For the sake of maintaining the peace and prosperity of our continent, I'm extending you an invitation to participate in the Kage Summit that will be held 3 weeks from now, on the 10th of January in the land of Iron's capital, Hofuna. The summit will tackle important matters such as trading agreements, diplomatic relations, military operations against terrorist organizations and dangerous rogue means, and last, but not least, a vote will be held in regards to offering you the title of Kage and elevating the land of rain and rivers to the status of a great nation. Let us know your decision in the next 3 days. Mifune, General of the Land of Iron. Chapter 19, Reconciliation. Don't underestimate me, you still wet behind the ears brat. You're 300 years too early to be going easy on me. Come on, don't get angry, Toad Geezer. We ought to take it easy at first and slowly warm up to heavy hitting. HMPF. You got yourself a new pair of fancy eyes, and suddenly we're not good enough for you anymore, huh? Come. Show me how good you are with your newfound visual prowess. The Rinnegan doesn't give me any advantage in taijutsu unless I'm fighting together with other paths or clones. Naruto tried to explain. Less chit-chat, more fighting. Man and Toad got into the fighting stance of the frog kata and looked at each other silently for a few seconds. Then, they lunged at each other with their whole strength. Despite the huge disparity between the tiny Toad and the fit young man, the two of them were evenly matched in strength. After exchanging over 24 strikes, neither could land a clean hit on the other, but that spoke more about the elder Toad's skill rather than Naruto's because the Toad could still keep up with him despite being severely disadvantaged when it came to height and arm reach. You're not half bad, the elder Toad said while panting. Looks like you haven't gotten fully absorbed by ninjutsu. You didn't neglect your taijutsu and sage mode. I commend you for that. Out of breath already, old man. Naruto grinned. You're decent when it comes to the strength aspect of the frog kumite, the elder Toad admitted grudgingly. But what about the gentle aspect of the kata? Gentle aspect? What do you mean? There's no better way for a thick-headed brat like you to learn than to feel it with your own skin, the elder Toad croaked before leaping towards Naruto. As natural energy enveloped his fists, Naruto got into a fighting stance again and started throwing hands. Whereas before the elder Toad would meet strength with strength and counterattack after every block with a closed fist punch, this time, his fighting style was completely different. Although Naruto had already grasped the concept of precognition and how to use it to determine his opponent's attack and counterstrike while using senjutsu, the elder Toad seemed to have taken it to the next level. Reminds me of Niji's taijutsu, Naruto thought as the elder Toad started deflecting his full senjutsu-powered strikes with the barest amount of movements, pushing his punches and his kicks to the side instead of blocking them head-on. The elder Toad leaned to the left and suddenly twirled his body in a clockwise pattern to avoid Naruto's hook before leaping towards his midsection and shouting, "Frog strike!" As the elder Toad's palm strike slammed into his gut, for a split second, Naruto didn't feel a thing. But then, he fell on his knees, clutching at his stomach with both hands in agony. What? What the hell was that? He wheezed out as he struggled to fight off the pain. Frog strike. It's a frog kumite attack that focuses on attacking the insides rather than the outside. Putting his hands behind his back, the elder Toad paced around as he explained to him the concept behind that attack. Shinobi have mastered all sorts of ways to strengthen their skin and muscles and toughen up their bones. The Raikage of Amigakure in particular are known for their 9 penetrable bodies. It usually gives them an overwhelming advantage over most taijutsu users. The frog strike was designed to fight against those types. This attack doesn't deal external damage. Instead, it sends the senjutsu chakra inwardly in waves, damaging the internal organs. So far, I have not heard of any shinobi or kunoichi who have managed to strengthen their internal organs. Ninja cannot toughen up their internal organs. As he started recovering from the painful hit, he got back to his feet. If it's so powerful, why didn't you use only that attack to one-shot me from the start? Naruto asked. The frog strike needs to land either on the head or on the torso to have a significant effect. Landing on your arms, shoulders, or legs won't do much damage. Besides, using a strong style is more effective and more unpredictable in most cases, which makes it harder to defend against. That said, ultimately, whether you'll make use of the strong or the gentle style depends on the opponent in front of you. In the end, there is nothing to stop you from using both styles of the frog kumite, mixing them up against your enemies. For the next 5 hours, the blonde and 5 of his clones could be seen practicing the frog strike on watermelons while the elder Toad watched over him and advised him. The goal of that training was for him to turn the watermelon's innards into a paste while the peel remained completely intact. Had it been the old him, he would have struggled for days, even with his shadow clone's help, because the frog strike was an attack that required perfect control over not only his chakra but his physical strength as well. But things were coming along much faster than the Elder Toad had expected, and Naruto had to thank the Rinnegan for it. Naruto had always been a very hardworking person, and his shadow clones had turned him into a genius of hard work over the years. Obtaining the Rinnegan on top of that was like giving wings to a tiger. There was no longer a ceiling for how high he could soar, his potential was limitless now. Not long after noon, one of his shadow clones finally managed to execute a perfect frog strike. As the clone dispelled and Naruto received its experience, he managed to throw a perfect frog strike as well. When the Elder Toad sliced the watermelon in half to check the result, the fruit's innards had been squashed into a liquid paste. Later that day, Naruto and Konan visited the factory that she had ordered to be built in Takumi Town, formerly known as Takumi Village. Although Amigakure's total number of shinobi wasn't that high compared to the numbers that the 5 elemental nations boasted, Konan had still stationed over 100 shinobi to patrol and protect Takumi Town's weapon factory and the craftsmen working there. As the two of them flew over the factory's perimeter, she nodded pleased at her shinobi's diligence on the job and their patrolling movements. They didn't know that Konan was going to visit the factory that day, so it wasn't like they were acting because they wanted to show their good behavior in front of her. "Shall we go take a look at their progress?" Naruto suggested. "I'm curious what they managed to create until now." They flew down and made themselves visible to the ninja below, who immediately fell on one knee and shouted, "Lady Konan, Lord Uzumaki." Naruto scratched his cheek with an uncomfortable look on his face, but he didn't attempt to dissuade them from treating him like that. Konan had had a serious conversation with him about that subject before. For the ninja of the Land of Rain, the Rinnegan wasn't just a strong Dojutsu. For them, Pain had been a god and she had been his angel. Naruto inheriting Nagato's Rinnegan made the rest of the shinobi look at him as the successor of God. For better or worse, he was their new god now, and he had to act as such when in public. Fortunately, the weaponsmiths from the Land of Rivers didn't share AIM people's reverence when it came to the two of them, so Naruto felt more at ease while conversing with them. "Greetings, Chief." Knowing that Naruto didn't like when others addressed him as if he was their lord, the craftsman took to calling him Chief jokingly, and it stuck. Naruto got rather close to them over the past few weeks as they spent many hours pondering over the secrets of his Azura path. "Chief?" Konan asked, raising an eyebrow in amusement. "We, the weaponsmiths from Takumi, are more like a clan instead of a simple association. We've had to stay close and take care of each other as if we were family in order to survive in the times of peace that followed the Third Ninja War. But Lord Naruto doesn't like to be called that, so we acknowledge him as our tribal leader." It had started off as a joke, but they really began calling him their chief after that. "Cut it off, you guys." Naruto jeered at them, getting red in the face. Konan found herself smiling at their interaction, happy at the fact that Naruto seemed to finally start opening up to other people as well. It was a sign that his emotional wounds were healing and that he was ready to let more people into his heart. After all, the blonde wasn't innately gloomy and taciturn like Nagato. Now, he was slowly going back to how he used to be in the past. "You have to see this devilish thing, Chief," an older craftsman said excitedly as he led them through the forge where dozens of other people were hard at work and ushered them outside through a back door into the factory's outdoor weapons testing area. "What am I looking at?" Konan asked, her curiosity piqued. "This, my lady, is a new weapon that we've created based on the Chief's Azura Path powers. We call it a wacha." A rough description of the so-called wacha would be that it looked like a wooden box standing on top of a two-wheeled wheelbarrow. The wooden box was filled with 36 arrows which had a small, cylindrical attachment bound to their tips. "Instead of explaining what it does, I'm going to show you." Saying that, the old man took out a matchbox and lit up the master fuse, which was connected to all the smaller fuses coming from each cylindric attachment. As smoke and flames engulfed the box, the 36 arrows were launched out mostly at the same time, decimating the group of wooden posts serving as the target. "An arrow launching machine? How does that work?" Konan asked in surprise. "These cylinders are filled with a special type of powder which explodes. It's something we created from seeing Azura Path's missiles. When the exploding powder starts burning, the arrow gets launched as if it were fired from a bow. The size of the weapon can vary, so one single man or woman could fire as many arrows as 30, 50, or even 200 people just by lighting up a fuse. It didn't take a genius to understand the immense potential of such a weapon. Konan and Naruto were both startled. By the way, depending on the type of cylinders we attach to the arrows, we could even make them explode upon impact. It would be like firing 36 arrows with an explosive tag attached to their tail, but the difference is that this exploding power is easy to mass produce and that even a civilian can operate this weapon. You don't need a trained shinobi or kunoichi to man it. This is incredible, Conan said in awe. Naruto, your idea was a stroke of genius. She and Nagato had never thought of making use of Azura Path to devise new weapons. But Naruto and his outside-the-box thinking led to the creation of such a fantastic tool. You give me too much credit. These guys are the ones who did the heavy thinking and lifting. I think they deserve a raise, don't they? Naruto said, smiling. Chief, the old craftsman exclaimed happily. Genji-san, seriously cut it off. Or maybe you don't want the raise. Naruto said in annoyance. No, Chief. Sorry, Chief. I mean dash. Conan laughed at their byplay. Of course they do. Moreover, I'm going to assign 15 more jounins to protect this factory. Also, I believe it would be prudent to expand the courtyard and make their families move in here for the sake of protection. I am not sure if you understand what a big game changer this weapon would be in a war. As few as 10 civilian people could probably hold back even 100 low-ranked ninjas in a siege. With our shinobi and civilians armed with this sort of weaponry, Amigakure would become impenetrable from the outside. We would be able to repel even the full army of Iwagakure if they decided to invade. By the time they came out of the weapons factory, the moon was already up. It was late in the evening. Are you sure you want to go alone? Conan asked. You're the leader of a nation, you can't just willy-nilly travel around. Naruto turned her down. It's best if I go alone. I've sent word to the Hokage and my shadow clone has already reached Konoha and is ready to summon me. As Conan became silent, Naruto stepped closer to her and raised her chin gently with a finger. Are you perhaps worried that I wouldn't want to come back? When she turned her head away, he smiled and wrapped his arms around her, bringing her to his chest. Due to her perpetual stoic expression, most people would be fooled into thinking that she was borderline emotionless or that she was stunted. Only Naruto knew how deep her feelings for him ran and that, deep inside, her worries and emotions were just as strong as those of any other person. Kurama's senses are a complete cheat. I can't keep anything secret from you, she muttered as she buried her face into his chest. Don't hide away, let me see your cute face, he said with a grin, gently forcing her to meet his eyes. Her pale cheeks were dusted with a red color and she was biting her lower lip. It was one of the very rare times when her mask completely broke, but he didn't embarrass her for long. Pressing a tender kiss on her forehead, he embraced her again to his chest and said, There's no way I'll ever leave your side after all you've done for me, Conan. As long as you don't turn on me like my former comrades did, nothing could possibly convince me to abandon you. How about you leave your visit to Konoha for tomorrow? Stay with me tonight, she said. The pleading look in her amber eyes single-handedly almost made him cancel his plans. It was with great difficulty that he managed to turn her down. I'd love that, but I can't put this off any longer. I have a feeling that if I don't take care of this now, I might not have the chance to do it for a very long time. We'll soon have to start our trip to the land of iron for the Kage Summit, won't we? My gut is telling me that things won't go well there. You don't have to be so pessimistic, she chided him. I thought it was my job to worry about the future, not yours. He chuckled a bit at her words. I can't not worry when I keep thinking about the great Elder Toad's prophecy. Even someone like me can see it. This looks like the perfect environment for a war to break out. The Akatsuki is no more, and the other hidden villages want to get their bijou back. They won't take no for an answer. The whole thing about offering you the title of a Kage is just a pretext. Conan couldn't say any words of retort. She had seen through Mifune's intentions in that letter from the start, she knew that he was right. Okay. I'll be waiting for you at home, she said, pressing a kiss on his lips that lingered. I'll be back in 3 or 4 hours I think. Don't wait for me, go to sleep. She gave him one more peck on the lips before he waved goodbye and disappeared in a plume of smoke as the shadow clone that he had sent ahead of time to Konoha whisked him away. This upcoming Kage Summit is such a headache, Tsunade thought as she momentarily closed her eyes and rested her forehead on her palms. The past several months had been like a nightmare, the most strenuous period of her tenure as the Hokage. The Akatsuki threat, Jiraiya's death, Konoha's destruction by pain, Naruto's defection from the village, and now the upcoming Kage Summit. It was the second Kage Summit in less than 3 months. It was unprecedented, and her instincts were even telling her that the worst had yet to come. Hokage-sama, the Land of Rain's envoy has arrived. Tsunade raised her head from her hands and sat straighter in her chair. A young man wearing a gray cloak entered the office. With his plain dark clothes, the conical hat on his hat, and the rebreather covering the lower half of his face, he looked exactly how someone would expect an Amigakure jonin to look like. "Leave us," Tsunade ordered the ANBU who were hidden in her office to protect her. If it had been the same Tsunade from half a year ago, the ANBU close to her might have tried to dissuade her from her decision, out of fear for her safety. However, after the brutal way that Tsunade massacred Root and Danzo, nobody dared to question her anymore. Even the elders who used to have great sway over the matters of the village, no longer dared to say a peep anymore. The slug Sannin was ruling the village now with an iron fist. "You may take off your disguise, Naruto," she said. As he put away the conical hat and the rebreather covering his face, Tsunade stood up from her seat and came to stand in front of him. The two of them looked at each other silently for a few moments before he found himself in Tsunade's bear-like hug as she embraced him tightly to her chest. "I'm sorry, Naruto." Her shaky voice and the wet feeling on his nape were all the proof he needed to understand that she was crying. He had never seen her cry before. She was that tough and badass granny who almost never showed a moment of weakness. For some reason, hearing her cry her eyes out, he could find it in himself to push her away. In the end, he had always seen Tsunade as his family, hence why the feeling of betrayal had hurt him that much in the beginning. Although he had still not forgiven her for how she threw him into the Hozuki Castle prison, time dulls everything. After spending several months away from Konoha, basking in the love and respect he received from Conan and the people of Amigakure, his wounds gradually healed, and much of his anger faded away. Ultimately, it wasn't in his nature to be vengeful and prone to rage. Even at the peak of his anger, when Konoha's team attacked him in the hospital, Naruto had held back against his former comrades and tried not to kill them. It was only after Might Guy opened the 7th inner gate and tried to kill him that he responded in kind. Letting out a sigh, Naruto put his arms around her too, returning her hug. At that gesture of affection, it was like a dam broke. Tsunade's tears didn't stop for a long time. "I hope you kept my arrival secret," he asked when she finally managed to regain her composure. "You don't want to see your former friends?" He shrugged a little. "Looking back, I wonder if I was ever that close to them. Were we really friends? How often did we spend time together and just hang out outside of missions?" "Not often. I guess I was always just that orphan kid who latched onto every bit of affection and attention I got and made things deeper than they really were. Anyway, I'd rather not meet them. What would I even talk to them about after I defected the village? After I killed Guy?" "I understand," Tsunade said. She didn't continue insisting. "How is it in the Land of Rain? Are you okay? Are you happy?" For the first time since he arrived, he showed her a genuinely happy smile. "Yes, I am. I'm in love with Conan. I'm happier than I've ever been." His declaration didn't come out as a surprise to her. She had suspected long ago that something was going on between the two of them after witnessing their interactions and mannerisms during their previous meeting in the Land of Rivers. "I used to imagine and dream about marrying Sakura one day, but then I met Conan. Those childish dreams of mine weren't even half as good as the reality. Conan, she is amazing." In a way, he was almost grateful that Konoha had cast him out because, without them turning their backs on him, his relationship with Conan would have never been possible. After all, she was a former member of the Akatsuki and the leader of a hidden village hostile to Konoha. But he shook his head and stopped daydreaming about his lover. "By the way, I heard that Sasuke broke out recently. How was that possible? I thought you would have killed him by now, or at least kept him in a secure prison." "We have no excuses for that. Our security cameras showed that the plant-like member of the Akatsuki traveled through the ground with a special technique that made him invisible to the sensors maintaining the barrier around the village. He popped into Uchiha Sasuke's prison cell out of the ground, unhindered. I should have killed him when I had the chance, Naruto muttered. His dark words didn't startle her. She was of the same opinion as him. If it wasn't for the fact that Sasuke had not committed any irredeemable sins against the village and that he was the last surviving member of the Uchiha clan, he would have been put to death long ago. But she had hoped that they would manage to strike a deal with him for the sake of the village. After all, as the Hokage, she had to consider the benefit of the village before her feelings. No use in crying over spilt milk. We will catch him again. With how blinded he is by his desire for vengeance, he is bound to come out of hiding soon. The last Uchiha or not, I won't spare him next time. We've already collected enough genetic material from him to inseminate dozens of women with his bloodline. I'm confident that many women would be willingly lining up at the chance of giving birth to a child with the Sharingan. I see. Now that he had shown a different level of maturity, the way Tsunade conversed with him had changed accordingly as well. She was no longer treating him like a dumb and annoyingly immature kid. She had made that mistake once, she had already learned her lesson. What are you planning on doing at the Kage Summit? I have a feeling that the Raikage is up to no good. I think so too, Naruto nodded. I haven't told you before, but the great elder Toad Sage at Mount Myaboku made 3 prophecies for me. 2 of them had already been fulfilled. I believe that the third one is inevitable as well. What's the third prophecy about? She asked seriously. His visions showed him a war which engulfed the whole world. Even Mount Myaboku was burning. If I had to guess, that war is going to start over their desire to get back the tailed beasts they used to control. A worried frown appeared on her face. Are you, by chance, in possession of all the bijou that the Akatsuki had captured? Even if I was, what of it? He said. You're playing a dangerous game, Naruto. I know you've gotten even more powerful than before, but even you cannot take on the armies of an entire hidden village all by yourself, much less if they allied with each other to destroy you. It would be a repeat of how Kirigakure and Kumogakure wiped out your clan. The Uzumaki were wiped out by Kumo and Kiri, he asked in wonder. It was yet another thing that was normally taught in the academy that he didn't know because he had never paid much attention to non-shinobi classes. Don't worry, Bachan. I am strong. Whereas before she would get annoyed at him calling her old, she found herself smiling at hearing him use that disrespectful but affectionate nickname again. Me who defeated pain almost half a year ago, even 5 of that version of myself wouldn't be able to defeat the current me. And we've been preparing for war for a while now. Amigakure is ready. I am ready. But my question is, what will you do? If a war were to break out, what would the Hidden Leaf and the Hidden Sand do? Should I be worried that you will turn against us too? Of course not. Tsunade almost shouted from how offended she was. I've signed a treaty with Amigakure. What kind of Hokage would I be if my promise had that little value? Besides, how could I bear to cause you any more pain after what I've put you through, she said quietly at the end. I can't promise you that Konoha will support Amigakure unconditionally, and I have no authority to dictate the Land of Wind's politics either. But there is one thing I can promise you, if a war were to break out, Konoha and Suna would not move against AIM unless you were the first to attack us. And if it ever comes down to it, if you ever find yourself at the end of the rope, Konoha's gates will always be open for you. You will always be welcome to come back, Naruto. Tsunade and Naruto had a long talk, up until the wee hours of the morning. Although their relationship was far from being as close as it used to be before, it was in the process of healing. Leaving the Hokage's office behind, Naruto felt as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. Making peace with Tsunade had meant to him much more than he had thought. He had not realized how important she was to him until then. He followed the Anbu who served as his guide silently. As they arrived in front of an old and dilapidated shrine, the masked Kunoichi turned to him and said, Hokage-sama instructed me to leave you alone. But make no mistake, foreigner, we will be watching you from a distance. Don't get any funny ideas. Naruto didn't pay any mind to her threats. He understood that she was just doing her job. The moment the Kunoichi left and he entered the old shrine, Kyubi's voice rang in his mind. You're finally there. Make a shadow clone for me and allow me to take control. You forgot to say please. Naruto grinned at the bijou's poignant silence. I'm waiting, please. There you go, it wasn't that hard, was it? Arrogant whelp, you're lucky that you're useful and that I need your help for the moment. The blonde chuckled as he put his hands in a cross seal and summoned a shadow clone. The clone's eyes turned into the red slits of a fox as it moved closer to the wall where about a dozen masks were being hanged on display. Not this one either. What are you doing? Asked Naruto when he saw the Kyuubi-controlled clone taking the masks down from the wall and bringing them close to his nose to sniff them all one by one. I have a feeling not all the masks here are the real thing, so I'm trying to find the mask with the strongest smell of death so you won't stab yourself more times than necessary. Wait, what? Why would I be stabbing myself? You never said anything about that. Then how else do you suppose you're going to cut open the Shinigami's belly? You left out a lot of details about this whole thing. That's so not cool, Kurama. Not cool at all. Would you have still wanted to go through with it if I told you from the start that you'd have to maim yourself? Asked the fox. Yeah, probably, he muttered unwillingly. Then why are you still whining about it? Now stop complaining and let me concentrate. Naruto let out a few curses under his breath but didn't disturb the bijou from his task anymore. Found it, Clone Kurama said and came to Naruto to hand him the mask. What now? Like, do I just have to put this on and stab myself in the stomach? That sums it up pretty well. But make sure you slice your guts open wide enough so there aren't any issues. Make it clean and quick. I'd rather not stay a second longer than necessary in this place. Throwing one last look at Kurama, Naruto put on the horned ritualistic mask. A terrible pain assaulted his senses, making him groan involuntarily. As the phantom of the god of death appeared above his body, Kurama shouted, "Now, cut yourself open. Don't be afraid, once the souls come out of the Shinigami's belly, my chakra will heal you." If anyone had told him half a year ago that one day Kyuubi would tell him to cut open his stomach and that he would listen to the fox and actually do it, he would have called them crazy. But life worked in mysterious ways. So there he was, holding the handle of a kunai with both hands as he stabbed himself in the stomach and made a gaping horizontal wound in his own flesh. Blood started pouring out of his gaping wound like a river, and a similar wound appeared in the death god's phantom's belly. For blue, indistinctive spirits came out from the phantom's gaping wound, and Clone Kurama slapped his palms together like in prayer. 3 of those souls slowly rose through the roof of the derelict shrine and disappeared into nothingness, ascending to the Pure Lands. But the 4th one was obstructed. A scream of agony that sounded like a mixture between a human scream and a beast's roar came from the 4th soul before it was split in half, 1 blue, and 1 red. Completely ignoring the blue half of the spirit as it scurried away through the ceiling and disappeared, Clone Kurama opened his mouth wider than a human should have been capable of before inhaling deeply and swallowing the red spirit. It was Kurama's own half, the one that Namikaze Minato had sealed inside the Shinigami's belly nearly 18 years ago. I'm whole again. Finally, Kurama said, his deep voice carrying feelings that were hard to put into words. That's great and all, but I'm dying here. Naruto's cranky voice came from the side. Clone Kurama dispelled itself, returning all chakra to the original. As Kyuubi's chakra entered his system again, his bleeding abruptly stopped, and the large slash in his stomach closed at a speed visible to the naked eye before recovering completely. If it wasn't for the obscene amount of blood soaking his clothes, one would be hard-pressed to believe he had been critically injured a few seconds ago. You've truly kept your word. Thank you, Naruto. I will not forget your kindness. On this day, I promise you that I will become your bloodline's guardian. I didn't do it to get something in exchange from you. Naruto began to say only for the bijou to cut him off. Shut up and let me finish speaking for once, Kyuubi growled in annoyance. I won't leave any of my debts unpaid. I am Kurama, the strongest-tailed beast in existence. I don't need charity. As Naruto became silent, the fox continued. I, Kurama, the 9-tailed demon fox, swear on this day to protect you and your bloodline. Your enemies will be my enemies, and your comrades will be my comrades. Up until the 5th generation that comes after you, I will protect you and your offspring with my life. I swear it upon the name given to me by the sage. Chapter 20, Punishment. By the time Naruto returned to Amigakure, the sun was about to rise. His conversation with Tsunade had taken much longer than he had expected, and the act of summoning the Shinigami and gutting himself open like a fish had been quite the ordeal as well. I told Conan I'd be back in 3 to 4 hours, but it's morning already. I must have worried her. After spending so much time with her, Naruto gradually got a better grasp of her real personality. She rarely showed her emotions on her face, but the ability to sense negative emotions that Kurama shared with him gave away her inner feelings. He took off his muddy boots and also hung his rain cloak on a rack before going inside. Once he took a shower and changed into a set of clean sleeping clothes, he went to the bedroom. A smile lit his face at the sight of the sleeping beauty in his bed. Even when she slept, she looked like an angel. As he got in bed next to her, Conan stirred awake and turned in bed to face him. It was impossible to get that close to a ninja of her caliber without waking them up. "You're back," she muttered in a sleepy voice. Despite her bleary eyes and the way that her soft blue hair stood in all directions, Naruto swooned at how pretty she was. The contrast between her always perfect doll-like appearance and her current disheveled look made her even more adorable in his eyes. "Yeah. Took me longer than I thought. Sorry." She only mumbled something incoherent as she stuck closer to him and lay her head on his chest. He grinned like a fool at the sight of it. Watching how comfy she was sleeping cuddled to his side, he was soon lulled to sleep as well. It was noon. The sky was as downcast as it was always in the land of rain, but, for a change, it wasn't raining that day. Seeing as it was the end of December, it was snowing. As Naruto opened his eyes, he was treated to the sight of large and dense snowflakes falling from the sky. Yawning, he stretched his hands above his head, and his whole body shivered from the pleasant feeling. But when he tried rubbing at his eyes with his hands, what the hell? Much to his stupor, his hands were tied above his head to the bed's headpost. More than a little confused by the situation, he put a considerable amount of strength into his movement as he pulled onto his restraints. Confusion turned into alarm when he realized that he couldn't feel his chakra. "I see you've woken up." Turning towards the familiar voice, relief washed over him. "Conan. Why am I being dash?" He ended up forgetting what he wanted to say when she saw the way she was dressed. "I see someone else woke up too," she said with a smirk as she leaned on her side against the door. A deep flush spread over his face at her teasing words. Getting a morning wood was normal for any healthy young man, but what he had there wasn't that, it was a tower. It made a tent visible even with a blanket covering it. He couldn't help it. He had never expected to ever see her, of all people, wear an outfit as slutty as that. Unlike the black leather pants and tight sleeveless vest that Conan used to wear under her Akatsuki cloak on a daily basis, today she looked like an entirely different person. She was wearing a kimono, but not of the traditional kind. It was a shoulderless kimono that left her shoulders bare and seemingly hung onto her lithe form only due to her breasts. The satin belt fastened around her thin waist further accentuated her hourglass-shaped figure, showcasing her big bust and wide hips. And the differences didn't stop there. Her kimono stopped just above her mid-thighs, barely covering her privates, leaving her smooth, long white legs bare for him to see. If that wasn't enough to bring out the beast inside of him, the thigh-high, big mesh stockings she was wearing and the choker around her thin neck certainly did the trick. He had seen many women wearing that kind of clothing before, courtesy of Jiraiya, during their trip. Only God knew how many times he had had to drag the old pervert out of brothels and beg him for training. He had seen his fair share of geisha during those 2 years, but he couldn't remember anyone looking as hot as Conan. What brought this on? He somehow found the presence of mind to ask. She kept that seductive smirk on her face as she walked towards the bed and pulled the blanket off him. Lemon removed. Lemon removed. Later, in the evening, "You okay?" he asked. Their naked bodies pressed together, Naruto held her close to him as she rested her head on his chest and listened to his heart beating. "Yeah, I'm fine." "You." Deep down, worry was gnawing at both of them because they had never had such frantic, hardcore sex before. She had never tortured anyone with pleasure before, and he had never been so rough with her body either. "What you did was different," Naruto said slowly, trying to find the right words. "Did you hate it?" The tone of her voice was normal, but he could tell with his negative emotion sensing how anxious she was as she waited for his answer. That ability was almost like a cheat when it came to interpersonal relationships. "I don't know. I think I almost died and saw a glimpse of the Pure Lands at some point," he said. She burst into nervous laughter at his words. "I didn't hate it," he said eventually, mollifying her worries. How could he? He had never come that hard in his entire life. He had almost passed out from pleasure. A short while went by without them saying anything. "Can we do it again?" she asked. Now, he couldn't believe it. He had come so many times that it hurt him even to just touch his dick. When he went to the bathroom a few minutes ago, he was so sensitive down there that he almost had a mini-orgasm while peeing. When he got into a relationship with Conan, he hadn't expected her to be such a wildcat or have that kind of libido and such out-of-ordinary preferences. It was at that moment that Jiraiya's words came to his mind. It's always the quiet ones that get freaky behind closed doors. Never forget that, or you might end up biting more than you can chew. Of course not. I'm not letting you, thirsty animal, anywhere near my pussy for a week, she burst out in embarrassment and indignation. The stoic and seemingly emotionless persona she showed in general was nowhere to be seen. Sorry, he snorted when another thought came to his mind and said, "If we do it again, do I get to call you mom again too?" She flushed so hard that he could feel the heat of her cheeks on his chest. "Shut up," she mumbled as she hid her face in his chest and poked him in the ribs. In retrospect, she didn't know what came over her and made her act like a dummy mommy. There was just something about Naruto that brought out desires in her that she'd never had before. The blind worship and gratitude the blonde had for her ever since she saved him from the blood prison made her want to treasure and protect him. His obedience towards her, however, awakened something she didn't know she had had in her all this time. She wanted to tease him, dominate him, and make him cry out in pleasure. But she also wanted to pamper and mother him, to give him all the love and affection that he craved, and more. She let out a quiet moan of arousal and pain as her thoughts caused the raw and abused place between her legs to act up again. It was with a great effort of will that she pushed the horny thoughts away and stopped her desires from being set on fire again. The new year was just around the corner, and the newly formed land of rain and rivers had hundreds of diplomatic and economic issues that she needed to deal with, especially since there wasn't a daimyo to govern over the domestic matters in her stead. The Kage Summit was getting closer by the day. The remains of Akatsuki was still threatening them from the shadows, and there was a prophecy of doom looming over them as well. But, at that moment, Conan didn't want to think about any of that. At that moment, the only thing on her mind was how good it felt to be held in his arms and bask in the warmth of his bare skin pressing against hers. The Rinne festival arrived, and with it, most of the people living in the elemental nations forgot, if only for a few days, about schemes, missions, and killings, and enjoyed the festive mood brought by the end-of-the-year celebrations. Nevertheless, while the majority of people were enjoying their time with their family, friends, or lovers and went out in the streets to light up fireworks, others couldn't share their joy. Somewhere in an underground cave in the land of sound, a handsome young man with pitch-black eyes was glaring blankly at the wall in front of him as he sat at the edge of the bed. "Sasuke, the preparations are complete," a hoarse voice came from an adjacent room. As he stood up and went into the next room, he looked at the operation table with a frown. It reminded him of his time under Orochimaru's tutelage. While the snake Sannin had never mistreated him until the last moment, the moments spent on the operation table as Orochimaru and Kabuto strengthened his body and worked towards making it immune to poisons had not been pleasant in the least. "But are you sure you want to do this? What if you turn into a plant? Your little pecker won't work anymore. You won't be able to revive the Uchiha clan after that either." "Kurozetsu, please shut that retard up or I will," Sasuke said in annoyance. While the black side of the Zetsu person was curt and acted with an inflated air of self-importance and superiority, Sasuke much preferred him instead of the overly chatty white Zetsu who had no filters on his mouth and often triggered him with his idiocy. In a way, it was even more annoying because he was reminding him of his former teammate, Naruto. "I want to remind you that this procedure isn't without risk. There is a chance that your body won't be able to cope with the power of Hashirama's cells and, in the worst-case scenario, you might really turn into a tree like this imbecile said," Black Zetsu warned him one last time. "It doesn't matter," Sasuke said darkly. "Nothing matters if I can't have my revenge." He didn't say it out loud, but everyone in the room knew what he meant, that he wasn't happy with the immense power he had already gained. It wasn't enough. "How long will it take for my Mangekyo Sharingan to evolve into the Rinnegan?" Sasuke asked as he took his clothes off and put on a patient's robe before climbing on the operation table. "We have no way of knowing that. It's not like there are many precedents of people awakening the Rinnegan. Madara was the only one who managed to do that after the Sage of the Six Paths passed away. How long did it take him? That, I am not sure. Rumor goes that Black Zetsu began to lie, only for White Zetsu to cut him off and start cackling. It took him more than 40 years. Ha ha ha. The Hokage and those who crushed the Uchiha clan will die of old age before you even get to . Shut the fuck up, imbecile. Black Zetsu screamed, punching the white side of his face angrily. Is there no way to speed that up? Sasuke asked, paying no mind to Zetsu's schizophrenic behavior. He had long since gotten used to it. I think I can help with that. At the sound of that voice, Sasuke suddenly sprung up from the operation table. His eternal Mangekyo Sharingan switched on, and a lightning blade appeared in his hand. Kabuto! How did you find this place? Sasuke shouted. It was impossible for him not to recognize that voice after spending the better part of 3 years together with him. Hiss-like laughter was heard as a strange man wearing a dark red hood stepped into the room. Deathly white, cracked skin, snake-like eyes partially hidden behind wide, round spectacles, and a large snake that came from his back almost like a tail. At Zetsu's command, wooden spikes broke through the concrete and sandstone floor as he turned to face the unwelcome visitor. Oh, my, no need for all that. I come in peace, Kabuto said, using his patented pushover voice as if to show that he had no ill intentions. As if anyone would believe a snake like you. Sasuke shouted, barely restraining himself from unleashing the flames of Amaterasu upon him. What are you here for? Came to take revenge for your master. Your thinking is still too naive, Sasuke-kun, Kabuto said, not losing his smile. In the first place, what makes you think Orochimaru-sama was dead? He lives on through me and anyone else who has ever borne his mark. Alas, I didn't come here today to talk about Orochimaru-sama but to propose an alliance. An alliance? What would you have to gain from allying with us? Black Zetsu asked. Kabuto threw a furtive glance at Sasuke, his long snake tongue coming out and licking his lips. But he turned his attention back to Zetsu and answered. The Rinnegan. Just as Sasuke was about to explode, Kabuto added. Not the Rinnegan that you're going to awaken. I want Uzumaki Naruto's Rinnegan. Or, better said, Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan. Say we agree to that, what do you have to offer? An alliance has to be mutually beneficial for it to make sense. I told you, I will help with speeding up Sasuke's awakening of the Rinnegan. I studied Hashirama's cells more intensely than anyone else in the entire world. Furthermore, I have seen the Rinnegan at work firsthand, and even done some research on it too lately. There's a limit to how many lies you can tell before . Black Zetsu began to say, only for his words to die in his throat when Kabuto slammed his palms together like in prayer and a wooden coffin broke through the already ruined floor. I can't believe it. White Zetsu spoke for the first time since Kabuto arrived. The coffin's lid fell off, revealing the reanimated corpse of one of the two strongest shinobi in the history of elemental nations, Uchiha Madara. I can make Sasuke awaken his Rinnegan in less than a year, Kabuto said smugly, dropping the pushover act now that he got the reins of the discussion. And I can also provide invaluable support in battle. Uchiha Madara is my trump card, my ace in the sleeve, but I have many more powerful cards at my disposal. Former members of the Akatsuki, former Kages, and many other formidable shinobi of the past. So what do you say? Am I contributing enough for this alliance to be worth it? Definitely, Black Zetsu answered, not beating around the bush. Welcome to the Akatsuki. Chapter 21, Bond. A group of roughly 50 ninjas was standing orderly in a large indoor arena, all of them looking respectfully to the ground instead of meeting the eyes of their leaders. Are these all the jonins in the village? Naruto asked Conan in a voice that only she could hear, surprised at the low number. Conan said in understanding. Amigakure may have a significant number of shinobi compared to other minor nations, but we are still severely outnumbered if you were to compare us with any of the 5 elemental nations. As Naruto listened with attention to her words, she continued. We don't know for sure the total number of shinobi that a hidden village like Konoha has, but we estimate that there should be anywhere between 10,000 and 20,000 ninjas if we're counting the ones in reserve too. He was speechless when she hit him with that number. He had always known that there were many shinobi in Konoha, but he had never really put an actual number to it. Comparing an average of 15k ninjas to Amigakure's 5k put it in a better perspective as to why the Land of Rain had suffered so much in the previous wars at the hands of Iwa, Suna, and Konoha. Not counting Tokubetsu Jonins, in general, barely 1% of the shinobi, or less, become Jonins in their lifetime. Jonins are the elites of a hidden village. They are shinobi and kunoichi who have reached the top with their skills and do not lack mental maturity and experience in the field either. It had not been an easy task for Conan to gather all the nation's jonins in one place at the same time because many of them had been in the middle of missions. Nevertheless, it had to be done. Although none of the jonins had voiced their dissatisfaction at being forced to wait on the sidelines and not take any jobs until everyone returned to the village, Conan could understand their unspoken feelings. "Everyone, please raise your head," Naruto said. At his words, the jonins raised their heads and looked at him with all sorts of feelings in their eyes. His negative emotion sensing didn't miss the feelings of anxiety and confusion coming off them. "You must be wondering why Lady Conan has gathered you all here today. I'm sure some of you feel it was a pity to waste so much time, unable to go on any missions until everyone made it back." Nobody said a thing, but, judging by the looks on their faces, he knew that his words hit the mark. "It's no secret that I used to be a Konoha shinobi until half a year ago. However, after everything I've done for my village, they framed me for a crime I didn't commit and threw me into the blood prison in the Land of Grass." All sorts of rumors about Naruto had been flying around amongst the ninjas of the Land of Rain, but they were all very surprised that he was addressing those rumors now directly. "When I thought everything was over, Lady Conan came for me, as she had promised. Not only did she break me out of Hozuki Castle, but she even chose me to continue Pain's legacy. On that day, I swore to her that I would stand with Amigakure until the end. As long as AIM didn't turn their back on me like Konoha did, I swore to protect her, to protect everyone with my life. Why am I telling you these things? It's for you to understand why I am willing to do the things that I'm about to do next." He put his hands in a cross-hand seal and a shadow clone appeared next to him. Then, a spiraling orb of blue chakra took form in the hand of the clone. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, one of Konoha's forbidden techniques, and Rasengan, the fourth Hokage's most prized technique. "I'm going to share my jutsu with all of you. Until the day I leave for the Land of Iron to participate in the Kage Summit, I will do my utmost to teach and train all of you. And even after Lady Conan and I leave, my clones will continue to instruct and supervise you." Even with their high level of discipline and the mixture of fear and reverence that the Rain Ninja held for Lady Conan and the bearer of the Rinnegan, the jonins couldn't hide their surprise when hearing those words. "Lord Uzumaki, if I may dash," one of the jonins began to say hesitatingly. It was a short-haired kunoichi in her late 30s, quite old for the standards of most active shinobi. "You can speak casually." At his encouragement, she let go of her anxiety and asked directly, "Is there a catch? Why would you give away such prized techniques? Why would you use your valuable time on people like us?" Conan had often told Naruto that, in the eyes of the Rain people, he was almost like a god, but to see that even a jonin would feel as if they were unworthy of his attention left him at a loss for words momentarily. "The Land of Rain has given me many things, things that I've always dreamed of but could never obtain before. But now, Amigakure is my home, Lady Conan is my lover, and you are my people. So don't talk about yourselves like that. I'm not some god that lives above the clouds, and you're not some insignificant ants. You are the jonins of Amigakure. You are the elites of the Land of Rain and Rivers. You have value." Unknowingly, with his speech, Naruto only caused the feelings of worship in their hearts to grow even bigger than before. "A war is brewing," Naruto continued. "You know better than anyone what happens when the 5 great nations go to war with each other. Located between Konohagakure, Iwagakure, and Tsunade, the Land of Rain suffered a cruel fate at the hands of these 3 countries' shinobi. Many of the jonins present in the underground arena at that moment had even experienced those terrible times themselves. I'm not worried about myself because I know that even if I were to face off alone against 1,000, I'd win. I'm powerful. But I want you to survive this war too. I want Amigakure to continue prospering. I want ordinary people to live on and continue growing in this land. For that, it's not enough for me and Lady Conan alone to be powerful. You need to grow stronger too. The Jounins no longer questioned him after hearing that heartfelt speech. But Naruto wasn't done just yet. He pulled a sealing scroll from the inner pocket of his Akatsuki and used his Rinnegan ability to make it levitate and unfurl itself in front of him. Placing his palm on the center circle inked on the scroll, a large object appeared in a plume of smoke. Does anyone here recognize this weapon? The Jonin's eyes widened. Who among them had not at least heard of the famous sword before? The numerous shark-like fins, the skull pommel, and the mouth filled with rows of shark-like teeth, the strongest sword among the 7 swords of the mist, the sentient sword, Samahata. To whoever masters Kage Bunshin and Rasengan first, this will be your prize. As the Jonins all stared at the legendary sword, Naruto took out another scroll and unsealed one more weapon. It was a broadsword of large proportions. For the second place, Kobikurabocho will be yours. The rest of Sasuke's teammates had all perished at the hands of Tsunade, Hayashi Hyuga, and Shikaku Nara during the battle in the Land of Rivers. After Aim annexed the Land of Rivers, Conan's people dug out the famed sword from underneath the ruins of Daimyo's demolished castle. As for the numbers 3, 4, and 5, they will get a weapon of their choosing from Takumi Village's renowned weaponsmiths. In the following days, Naruto and Konan found themselves swamped with work. Once Amigakure annexed the Land of Rivers, word of their deeds spread all over the continent because the situation wasn't as simple as a minor country taking over another minor country. The Land of Rain and the Land of Rivers were thought of as little more than buffer zones between Konoha and Iwa and Konoha and Suna, respectively. The fact that Amigakure had annexed the Land of Rivers and that Iwagakure, Konohagakure, and Tsunade had yet to show any reaction had set most of the countries on edge. The Akatsuki's defeat, the disappearance of the tailed beasts, the death of the Tsuchikage at the hands of Uzumaki Naruto, and the annexation of the Land of Rivers. The elders of any hidden village all over the continent could practically smell it. It was the smell of war. It was no different from how farmers could tell just by smelling the air when a storm was about to come. The older and more experienced shinobi could tell that a fourth ninja war was just around the corner. It was in such a political context that Conan sent envoys to all the neighboring countries except for Iwagakure, informing their daimyos that the Land of Rain and Rivers was willing to export their goods. If there was one thing that AIM had always had an abundance of, it was food. Due to its climate and advanced technology, the Land of Rain's production of rice, fish, and canned food had always been great. Considering the unstable and unpredictable future awaiting them, many daimyos decided to take the chance to prepare for the worst now, taking advantage of Amigakure's cheap prices. Tsunade, in particular, imported more rice and canned food than all of AIM's other clients combined. The experiences of the past taught them what a tragedy it was for famine to break out in the middle of a war. While Conan was wrapped up in economic and diplomatic matters, Naruto was fully focused on personally training the Jonins of Amigakure. But he didn't stop at only training the Jonins. His shadow clones were teaching his Kage Bunshin and Rasengan techniques to the Chunins as well. The number of Chunins was vastly superior to that of Jonins, so it was impossible to train them all in one place. Therefore, Naruto organized 3 different camps outside of Amigakure, but still within the Land of Rain's borders. The first camp was a temporarily made fort, not far from Amigakure. Thanks to his endless reserves of chakra and his mastery of the Doton element, it took only a few hours for a new settlement to come into existence. A few dozen simple houses made of rocks, a very large training ground, and a tall rampart surrounded the fort for the sake of protection and privacy against outsiders. It was all that was needed for a training camp. The Chunins only had to bring with them their rations and their sleeping bags. The second training camp was built on the outskirts of Mizumi no Mura, a large village located on the shores of the second largest lake in AIM. As for the third camp, it was built not far from Aoshi, a village surrounded by paddy fields, close to the former, now abolished, border between rain and rivers. With how busy Naruto and Konan were every day, time flew by in the blink of an eye. Days turned into weeks, and now the moment came for them to leave for the Land of Iron. Instead of taking 2 bodyguards, as every other Kage would undoubtedly do, Konan only took Naruto with her. Seeing as they were both capable of flight, their journey was going to be quicker and less troublesome. Won't they complain that you're not respecting the customs of the Kage Summit? Naruto asked her as they flew above the plains of the Land of Grass. You're supposed to have 2 bodyguards. We both know this Kage Summit is just a pretext for them to interrogate us about the Biju's whereabouts, Conan said. Besides, no place on the elemental nations is safer than being next to you. 1 or 10 extra bodyguards would make no difference. At her words, Naruto suddenly flew below her, parallel to her body, and stole a kiss from her lips before barrel rolling away, laughing. A smile melted her serious expression, and her orange eyes filled with warmth at his behavior. You're such a goofball. He tried to pull the same trick again and steal another kiss from her, but, suddenly flapping her large paper wings, Conan rolled away in the air and ended up taking his back instead. You've still got much to learn when it comes to aerial combat, she said as she embraced him from behind and giggled softly. But while Conan was laughing at his expense, his hands came together and formed 3 signs, ending with a snake seal. A startled cry left her lips when his weight suddenly increased more than times over, making them both plummet to the ground. She couldn't even get away and let him drop by himself because, right after casting the ultra-added weight technique, Naruto grabbed her by the wrists, forcing her to fall together with him. The two slammed heavily into the ground, creating a large depression in the thick blanket of snow covering the plains of the land of grass and raising a large cloud of snow in the air. Are you out of your mind? Conan cried out breathlessly. It was unlike her to raise her voice like that, but the stunt he had just pulled had taken her completely by surprise. Seeing him laugh out loud and not even getting off her, Conan started raining punishment on his face. His nose, his ears, and his cheeks, there wasn't an inch of skin that her fingers hadn't pinched or pulled at. You're incorrigible. Seriously, she admonished him when she finally thought she had punished him enough. Although he was beet red and pulsating with pain all over from how she had roughed him up, Naruto's smile was so wide that the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. The two of them continued to lie down in the crater they made in the snow, slightly out of breath from their rough playing but with content and happy smiles on their faces. Naruto, in particular, felt as if he was in heaven as he lied on his back on top of Conan, with the back of his head buried in the valley of her full breasts. I missed having you all to myself, Naruto said. He was always so honest about his feelings for her and so affectionate that Conan was often caught off guard. A radiant smile appeared on her normally stoic-looking face, and she put her arms around him, resting them on his chest, just below his chin. Some time passed without anyone saying anything. Eventually, he broke the silence. Say, Conan. Yes. About the bijou. Are you sure about it? We've been over this several times before, she said and pinched his nose as if to show that she was displeased. I just don't want you to have second thoughts. I don't. I promised you that I would stand by your side, did I not? I know that, he muttered. But there are so many lives at stake. If Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri really want to start a war for the bijou, many of our people will lose their lives. As he had already told the Jonins, Naruto wasn't scared about the war looming on the horizon. He was completely certain that he and Conan would survive. However, that wasn't the case for the rest of the people living in the land of rain and rivers. Many more would die if we became subservient to the 5 great nations again and gave them back the bijou they used to control. It would just be a repeat of history. But we're trying to break that curse, aren't we? Conan explained patiently, in a calm voice. In the short term, we will experience hardship and loss, but that is inevitable. Change can't happen without pain and sacrifice. Being a leader is so much harder than I thought when I was younger, he said, dejected. For the first time since he became a shinobi, Naruto was feeling just how heavy was the weight and responsibility that came with the knowledge that the lives of tens of thousands of people depended on him. Don't lose heart, said Conan softly as she started caressing his spiky blonde hair, gently raking her nails over his scalp. You're doing great so far. Our people absolutely adore you, you know that, don't you? In the weeks that followed the construction of the training camps, Naruto's popularity with the ninja of the land of rain skyrocketed. She sat up, and, along with her, Naruto also sat upright, but Conan didn't let go of him. Instead, she embraced him lovingly as she continued to say encouraging words in his ear. Nagato saved Amigakure from Hanzo's reign of terror, and most of the people had been grateful for that. But he had always been a symbol of vengeance, fear, and strength for them. It wasn't love and gratitude that made everyone respect and follow him. It was his overwhelming power. Hanzo's reign was one of darkness. Pain's reign was filled with blood and fear. But you are different. You are like a ray of light breaking past the thick curtain of clouds covering AIM's skies. Your kindness made them love you, and your strength didn't inspire fear and terror in their hearts. It planted the seed of hope. Whereas pain had been like a deity of terror and vengeance for the people of the land of rain, it took only a few weeks for Naruto's image to cement itself in their hearts as a divinity of kindness and generosity. Several weeks after he started training the Jonins and Chunins of AIM, many of them were still finding it hard to believe that Naruto would share his most prized techniques, the legendary Rasengan and the Kenjutsu Kage Bunshin, without asking for anything in return. The fact that Naruto had also killed the Tsuchikage after he and his army of elite Jonins trespassed the borders of the land of rain wasn't forgotten either. Strong and vicious towards the enemy but warm and kind with his subordinates, it was no wonder that his popularity with the people rose like that. We can't control everything. That's how life is. All we can do is try to make the most of every situation. And we've done that, haven't we? We've eliminated that Madara imposter, we solved our country's economic crisis and started trading again with our neighbors, we've more than doubled our territory, and we obtained a gold mine. We've also signed a treaty of non-aggression with Konoha, we've developed new weaponry, and you've even started teaching your jutsu to our shinobi. We've accomplished so many things in such a short time. We've done all we could, Naruto, she finished, kissing him lovingly on top of his head. Naruto felt his worries and anxiety recede as he listened to her breathy, soothing voice. I wonder, how did Gaara do it? The Kazekage? She asked for confirmation. Yeah. He was what, 16 years old when his people chose him as their Kage? How did he bear with such a burden? Naruto himself was feeling a great burden knowing that his actions dictated the fate of tens of thousands of people, but the land of wind was more than 10 times larger and more populous than the land of rain. The pressure that Gaara must have felt had to have been even bigger. Difficult times breed strong people. When push comes to shove, a person of character will rise to the occasion. You are like that too, you've proven it more than once. So don't worry. Don't hesitate. If you ever get tired, I'll be next to you to offer my shoulder for you to lean on. If you ever stumble, I'll be there to pick you up. If you ever lose faith in yourself, remember that your people trust you. Remember that I believe in you. Her heartfelt confession moved him deeply. But Conan had no way of knowing what he truly felt deep inside, so when she saw him gently prying her arms off him and standing up, a look of hurt flashed on her face, thinking that he was rejecting her. But, as she got up to her feet as well, she quickly schooled her expression, reverting her face to her usual stoic mask. As Naruto turned around to face her, she saw that he appeared to be searching for something in the inner pocket of his Akatsuki robe. I've been planning to do this after we return from the Kage Summit, but I can't put it off any longer. Naruto began to say and took his hand out of his robe. Conan froze, her amber eyes looking at his hand wide, unblinkingly. When my friends and my village cast me out, you came for me. You didn't only save my life, you gave me something I've never had, respect, affection, and love. You gave me a home. You changed my life, Conan. What are you saying? She barely whispered. I promised you once that as long as you don't turn your back on me, I'll always protect you and Amigakure. I want to renew that promise today. As the blonde dropped to one knee in front of her, a note appeared in Conan's neck, making her feel as if she couldn't breathe. I love you, Conan. I could never repay you for everything you've done for me, but I want to devote my life to making you happy. I want to see you smile beautifully every day for the rest of your life. I want to be your one and only. Will you be mine too? Will you marry me? He said and opened the small box he was holding in his hands, revealing the ring inside. Outside of her control, her amber eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yes, of course, yes, she said in a quivering voice, trying to muffle her sobs by covering her mouth with her hands. He stood up again and gently pulled her left hand away from her face. Bringing her hand closer to him, he took the ring from the box and slid it up her ring finger. For a few moments, Conan admired the sight of the gem-encrusted silvery ring, but then she threw herself into his arms. Her arms hugged his neck tightly as she pressed her lips to his in a soulful kiss. Every now and then, she would break the kiss, cup his cheeks, and stare at his face in amazement before going back to kissing and embracing him again. It was as if she couldn't believe that what was happening was real. As for Naruto, he felt his heart swell with his love for her. Those tears of happiness ruined her makeup, and her nose became ruddy, but, at that moment, she couldn't appear any more sweet and adorable in his eyes. "Stop crying, or you'll make me cry too. We're supposed to be happy now." His words made her burst into laughter despite her sobs. "But I am happy. The happiest I've ever been," said Conan, burying her face into the crook of his neck. After Yahiko's death, she did not take another lover. She thought that most of her heart had died that day, and whatever was left of it went to the grave with Nagato on the day he died too. Completely alone in the world, with a frozen heart, and left with no hope for the future, she had never imagined that a moment like this would come into her life one day. Never had she thought that she would find such love one day or that she would become a bride at her age. "Can you tell me again that you love me?" A wide smile appeared on his face at her words. "I love you," he said sincerely, and he tightened his arms around her just a bit more. "I want to hear it again. Please." Gently pushing her away from him, he cupped her face tenderly and kissed her lips. "I'll say it as many times as you want. I love you, Conan." Surrounded by snow from all sides, in the middle of a seemingly endless plain, Naruto and Conan appeared to be alone in the whole world. But that might as well have been the case for the two of them because, at that moment, nothing except for the other existed in their minds. Time lost meaning as they embraced each other. Their emotions, their feelings of love, and their chakra. They were pouring their very being into it. That wasn't a kiss, it was a joining of souls. Chapter 22, Cycle of Hatred. Thanks to their ability to fly, even with Naruto's antics slowing them down, they were still ahead of schedule, so they could travel leisurely on their way to the land of iron. Now, they weren't even flying anymore, they were just walking hand in hand. Every now and then, Conan would raise her left hand and look at the glittering piece of jewelry on her ring finger. "You like it?" he asked, smiling when he noticed how often she glanced at her engagement ring, a silvery band and a deep blue gemstone. The stone was teardrop-shaped and not too big, it was the perfect size for her dainty hand. "It's brilliant. I love it," she beamed at him. "But when and how did you get my finger size right?" "It was on the day when I returned from Konoha," he said. "After you fell asleep, exhausted, I secretly measured it." Her eyes widened in realization, and a hint of red appeared on her cheeks as she recalled what happened that day. It was the day when they had the raunchiest and most hardcore moments of their intimate lives. "Just so you know, I decided to propose before I arrived, while I was on my way back from Konoha," Naruto said, but her embarrassed countenance made him involuntarily flush too. He realized what she must have been thinking of. He coughed 2 times in his fist as if to banish the embarrassing moment before saying, "I commissioned the ring from the jeweler's store in Tenzaku-gai. I wanted something that symbolized sincerity, loyalty, and faithfulness. So they told me to get a blue sapphire." Her hold on his hands tightened a little at his words. "It's perfect," she said, and she leaned in to kiss him on the cheek. "It even matches my hair." He wasn't content with just that. He pulled her by the hand until she was right up in front of him. He cupped her cheeks in both hands before taking her lips in a tender kiss, a kiss that Conan happily returned and deepened as she wrapped her arms around his neck. Her Akatsuki robe rode up her thigh, revealing the tight leather pants she was wearing underneath when she raised her leg to wrap it around his waist. Groaning with desire, his hands were quick to move down and grab her ass before lifting her. Conan smiled into the kiss as she bounced up in his arms and wrapped both legs around his waist. But just as they were starting to get more into it, Conan suddenly made a one-handed ram seal. A body flicker jutsu made them abruptly disappear from their spot, and it was not a second too late. The very next moment, a streak of green light flashed through their previous spot, and a powerful wind swept in its wake, raising a cloud of snow in the air. "What happened?" Naruto asked, not having expected Conan to suddenly sweep him away with a body flicker movement. The two of them had been in the middle of the Shunshin, so Naruto didn't see the streak of light that flashed past them. "It's an ambush," Conan said. She was a sensonin. Although she had sensed their attacker the very moment that he entered her sensing range, he was so fast that she could barely react in time. If she had hesitated for even a second, they would have been in deep trouble. 5 shadow clones popped next to Naruto and scattered in different directions before he raised his hands and said, "Shinra Tensei." The blinding clouds of snow filling the air were blasted away, instantly clearing the field of any obstacles. Then he was able to see their attacker. It was a boy in his late teens. His skinny build, tight green jumpsuit, and bowl-cut hairstyle made it impossible for Naruto to not recognize him. It was one of his former comrades, the one he used to call Centipede Brows. "Rock Lee, what do you think you're doing?" Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes at him. Has he gone mad? He wondered. If word went out that Konoha tried to ambush him and Conan while they were on their way to the Kage Summit, it would become a huge diplomatic scandal. I know for a fact that Tsunade wouldn't send an assassin after us, and even if she were to send one, it wouldn't be someone like you. Rock Lee watched the two of them silently for a while. The heat emanating from his body as he burned his chakra melted all the snow 20 feet around him, turning the white plains into a muddy swamp. His dark red skin, the pulsating veins on his forehead, and his white eyes made it hard to gauge his facial expression, but one thing was clear, he didn't come all the way there, in the land of grass, just to say hello. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ambushed them with a deadly attack after opening the 6th inner gate. I'm not here at Hokage-sama's request, Rock Lee finally said. Then? What are you here for? Why have you attacked us? Conan asked. Out of consideration for Naruto's feelings, she didn't retaliate right away. She knew that they used to be comrades. You have the gall to ask why. After what you've done. Rock Lee spoke, his voice quivering with anger. So you're here for revenge, Naruto said, an unreadable expression on his face. Damn right, I am. Rock Lee screamed. The green aura of chakra coming out of his body grew in intensity as he put his hands in an X guard and yelled. 8 inner gates, the 7th gate of shock. Open. Noticing that Conan was about to unleash her deadly salamander poison, Naruto put a hand on her wrist, stopping her. Please don't intervene. Don't kill him. Leave this to me. She looked at him for a few seconds before nodding. Okay. A pair of large angel-like wings sprouted from her back, and she flew at a considerable distance from them, giving Naruto all the space he needed. Simultaneously, a shade of red appeared at the corners of Naruto's eyes, and his irises turned into those of a toad in appearance as he entered the Sage mode. Due to the nature of the Rinnegan and its outer path, the shadow clones didn't even need to dispel in order to transfer the natural energy to him. The Rinnegan made it possible for him to bypass the only weakness of the Sage mode. Lee. I don't want to kill you, Naruto said in a warning tone. Shut up. Rock Lee screamed at him. Gai-sensei was everything to me. He wasn't just my teacher. He was like a father to me. I was just a talentless orphan. When everyone cast me aside and called me useless, he took me in. He taught me his taijutsu and transformed me into the shinobi that I am today. I would be nothing without him. He was my hero. He was my everything. But you took him away from me. You killed him. Despite Rock Lee's rage-filled shouts, Naruto's face remained stoic. I gave him a chance to back away. I gave everyone a chance to retreat when you all attacked me in Amigakure. But he was intent on keeping at it. He was the first to use lethal force. I merely responded in kind. Guy only has himself to blame. Shut up. Rock Lee shouted, and his arms became a blur, filling the air with hundreds of fireballs. It wasn't ninjutsu, so Naruto couldn't use the Preta path to absorb them. It was taijutsu. The fireballs weren't made of chakra but by the friction of his punches with the air. And the Rinnegan couldn't absorb regular fire. Alas, that wasn't the only way for him to defend against Rock Lee's move. The Rinnegan was very versatile. Shinra Tensei. The hundreds of fireballs were blasted away and extinguished, and Rock Lee himself was sent flying over 2 kilometers away, rolling and tumbling onto the snowy plains endlessly due to there not being any trees or rocks to stop his momentum. The green aura of chakra expelled by his body exploded in intensity as he shouted, enraged at how effortlessly Naruto had crushed his prized taijutsu technique. Don't make me kill you, Lee, Naruto said calmly as he flew over to him with his hands behind his back. You still have time to walk away, but Rock Lee couldn't even think about giving up. While everyone had ridiculed him for his lack of talent and told him to give up, he had endured. He refused to give up. His stubbornness was second to none, and the rage smoldering in his veins could not be put out by reason. The ground under Lee's feet shattered like glass, unable to withstand his monstrous strength as he launched himself at Naruto, full of rage. Dynamic entry, he yelled as he came at him with a flying kick, intent on taking his head off. Rock Lee was so fast that his body appeared like a blur, he was barely visible to the naked eye. But the danger sense of Naruto's Sage Mode was more than enough to let him react to his speed. Konoha Senpu. Rock Lee yelled when Naruto dodged his flying kick and rotated his body, throwing a whirlwind kick. Every single one of his kicks made the air explode as they broke the sound barrier, and the friction of his body's movement against the air caused flames to erupt all over. But Naruto weaved through his attacks as if he could see the future. "Leaf Rising Wind," shouted Rock Lee as he kicked upwards, aiming for Naruto's chin, but the blonde tilted his head to the side, making him miss. This time around, however, Naruto didn't just dodge but also grabbed his overextended leg with his left hand. Rock Lee's instincts screamed at him to get away, but he couldn't budge his leg an inch from his vice-like grip. The brute strength of his Sage Mode was immeasurable. In a panic, Rock Lee raised his other leg in an attempt to throw a switch kick, but Naruto was faster than him and acted before he had the time to make a move. Frog Strike. His hand was engulfed in Senjutsu as she smashed his palm into Rock Lee's gut, blasting him away like a cannonball. But Rock Lee immediately flipped back to his feet and even managed to make 2 steps, seemingly about to throw himself at Naruto once again, before the delayed effect of the frog strike kicked in and he collapsed on his hands and knees. A mouthful of blood burst from his mouth, painting the snowy ground red. Fighting through the immense pain coming from his damaged internal organs and despite the large amount of blood pouring from his mouth, Rock Lee was still on his knees when he put his trembling hands together in a hand seal that resembled a tiger seal and shouted, "Hiradora!" Daytime Tiger was the most powerful attack he could launch while he was in his 7th gate. It was on a completely different scale from any attacks that he had thrown until then. As the pressurized air took the form of an enormous white tiger, Naruto furrowed his brows for the first time since the start of the fight. He tapped into the Bijou chakra stored inside his body, making a cloak of red energy engulf his body before he raised his hand towards the several 100-meter-wide tiger jaws coming at him. Shinra Tensei. Rock Lee watched in sheer disbelief as the most powerful attack he was capable of was blasted away and dispersed into nothingness. One of Naruto's shadow clones suddenly appeared above him and axe-kicked him in the spine, making him scream in pain. Then, the clone grabbed Rock Lee by one of his legs and brutalized the ground by repeatedly slamming him down. Lastly, the clone grabbed him in a full Nelson. Gakido. Beaten to an inch of his life and with his chakra drained out of his body entirely, the next thing Rock Lee saw was Naruto landing in front of him, turning his arm into a huge chakra cannon, and pointing it at his face. "This is your final warning, Lee. Submit or die," Naruto said, his cold, inhuman Rinnegan eyes striking deep terror into his heart. Rock Lee closed his eyes, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. "You're strong. You defeated me without even trying. You're so strong. Why couldn't you do the same to Gai-sensei?" Naruto understood the pain that Rock Lee was going through at that moment. Less than a year ago, he had been in that exact situation as well, losing badly against Pain, who had killed his sensei, Jiraiya. "I wasn't that powerful half a year ago," Naruto explained, but he didn't move his chakra cannon away from Rock Lee's head. "Your comrades attacked me while I was in the hospital. That was the first time I had used the Rinnegan. Guy was too powerful for me to beat him without killing him." However, it was as if his words fell on deaf ears. As lost in his rage and bitterness as he was, Rock Lee didn't register what he said. "We used to be comrades. I thought of you as a friend. Why did you kill Gai-sensei?" he shouted, blood, tears, and mucus staining his face. "Don't make me do this, Lee. Stand down." Naruto shouted in a strong voice and a massive amount of chakra started gathering in the wide barrel of his Azura Path chakra cannon. However, unexpectedly, even though he shouldn't have had any chakra left other than the amount needed to stay alive, the boy let out an enraged roar, and a burst of chakra dispelled the shadow clone who was immobilizing him and blasted the real Naruto away before he could react. 8 inner gates, the gate of death. Most of his chakra was already gone due to Naruto's Preta Path absorbing it. But Rock Lee no longer cared what happened to him. His skin darkened and cracked. A cry erupted from his throat, and red vapor seeped out from the cracks in his skin, mixing with the chakra that was being expelled from his heart. The justice I delivered to the Leaf Village is no different from what you are trying to do to me. The pain of losing something dear to you is the same. And both of us know that pain very well. You have your justice. And I have mine. We are both ordinary men, driven to seek vengeance under the banner of justice. However, if there is justice in vengeance, then justice will only breed more vengeance and trigger a cycle of hatred. Uzumaki Nagato's words came to the forefront of Naruto's mind as he watched Rock Lee burn his blood and lifespan away, blinded by revenge. What is the answer to peace? He asked himself. He no longer believed in Jiraiya's idealistic dreams because his own experiences, the way Konoha betrayed him, proved the fact that they were mere fantasies. We know what the past has been, and we can predict what the future will be. That is history as we know it. So we cannot help but believe that human beings are incapable of understanding each other. The world of the ninja is ruled by hatred. How would you confront this hatred in order to create peace? When Pain asked that question, Naruto did not know what to say. I don't know. He didn't have an answer in the present either. It's human nature to be selfish. To envy. To desire. To lie. To kill. As long as people exist, peace will never be possible. Therefore, he stopped thinking about it. When he was a kid, after his battle against Sasuke at the Valley of the End, Jiraiya told him, to be a ninja, you need more than strength and jutsu. You must acquire the judgment to make the right decisions. If you want to live as a ninja, you must become smarter. This world. There's no place for a fool. That's the reality. In a few words, Jiraiya told him to stop dreaming and grow up. And grew up he did. Being thrown into the blood prison made sure of that. It destroyed the last bit of optimism that he had had. I'm not smart. I don't know what the solution to world peace would be. I won't chase something as vague and unrealistic as that. I'll just do what I've always done. I'll protect the people I love and beat into the ground the ones who threaten my life or theirs. Naruto's eyes became steely, and a look of determination appeared on his face. At that moment, Rock Lee was done powering up the 8th inner gate. Since Naruto had already drained most of his chakra earlier, the boy knew that he didn't have much time left before his life ran out. I'll bet it all on one final attack. Even if he wanted to stop now, it was too late to turn back. The red cloak of chakra and blood surrounding him exploded in intensity as he crouched on the ground, and a crimson dragon head was conjured around his body. This was his final stand. Night Guy. However, a split second before he could throw himself at Naruto, 4 voices were heard from 4 different directions around Rock Lee. They were 4 out of the 5 clones that he had created at the beginning of the fight. Naruto's Deva path was on cooldown after blasting apart Rock Lee's earlier 7th gate Hiradora attack, but that wasn't the case for his shadow clones too. The 4 clones raised their right hands at the same time before shouting, Bansho Tenin. Pulled from 4 different directions by the power of the Rinnegan, Rock Lee erupted in a scream of agony. He felt as if he was going to get ripped into pieces by the 4 contrasting forces. And that would have definitely been the case if it were not for the enormous crimson dragon that covered his body after he activated Night Guy. Thanks to it, he wasn't killed instantly, but he was locked in space, unable to move. As Rock Lee appeared to be petrified in midair, immobilized, Naruto aimed his chakra cannon at him. The air around the mouth of the barrel appeared to get distorted from the massive accumulation of chakra. Hakai. A massive beam of chakra burst from the Azura cannon. It didn't just kill Rock Lee, his entire body was erased from existence. And that wasn't all. The beam of chakra continued annihilating everything in its path, evaporating all the snow and leaving a wide and deep gash in the earth below. It went on until it smashed into a very distant mountain at the land of grass border with the land of earth, obliterating it and raising a humongous mushroom cloud to tens of miles in the air. Chapter 23, The Second Kage Summit. The land of iron was also known as the land of samurai. Long before the creation of the hidden villages, the samurai had organized themselves into a feudal state. It was one of the oldest countries in the world. Whereas the ninja used to be organized in clans and acted more like mercenaries for the highest bidder, the samurai had always had a strong sense of belonging and loyalty to their feudal lord. Located in the far north of the continent, the Land of Iron was geographically removed from the 5 elemental nations and their conflicts over jutsu, territory, and resources. Nevertheless, due to its subarctic climate, which was characterized by long and very cold winters and short and cool summers, the Land of Iron was not self-sufficient when it came to food. They had to import it from the Land of Grass for the most part. That being said, the Land of Iron couldn't easily adopt an isolationistic policy. It still had to engage in trading and diplomacy with the 5 great powers, and it still needed a powerful army to serve as a deterrent for those who would lust over their resources of iron and other ores. Individually, shinobi were stronger and more versatile, but the samurai shone in group battles through their tactics, discipline, and organization. And they were numerous enough for any would-be invaders to have second thoughts about starting a war. So you better don't offend them for no reason, okay? Unofficially, they are the 6th strongest nation in the world, Conan told Naruto once she finished explaining to him the background and history of the Land of Iron and their status in the ninja world. I'll let you do all the talking anyway, so don't worry. I'm only here as your bodyguard, Naruto said, smiling. Once the two of them arrived at the entrance of Hofuna, the capital of the Land of Iron, they were unexpectedly welcomed by none other than Mifune and his 2 aides, Okisuke and Yurakaku. We have been awaiting your arrival, Conan Dano. I am Mifune, the general of the Land of Iron. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Conan, the leader of the Land of Rain and Rivers, Conan replied. Please, come inside. The weather in our country isn't kind to southerners, Mifune said, gesturing for them to follow him. Although the 3 samurai tried to be discreet about it, Naruto could feel their gazes on him every now and then, and his negative emotion sensing betrayed how wary and anxious they were about him. Looks like word of the Rinnegan's prowess has traveled all the way to this country too, Naruto thought as he followed behind Conan's back. This is a good thing. The more aware they are of how powerful I am, the smaller the chance that they would try to pull anything fishy while we are here. The Kage Summit's venue was an impressive-looking pagoda, but the actual room holding the meeting was very small and modest-looking considering the impact it would have on the rest of the continent. It was a square room, barely 10 meters wide, and the only furniture inside was a U-shaped table with 6 seats and a small, 1-seat table placed in front of it. Behind each seat, there were curtains with a large kanji symbol painted on them, showing each leader's allegiance: fire, wind, iron, water, earth, and lightning, in that order. As for the curtain behind the 1-seat table opposite them, there were 2 kanji painted on it, rain and rivers. Hidden behind the 7 curtains were the bodyguards that each leader had brought with them to the summit. Temari and Kankuro were standing behind Gaara, Akatsuchi and Kitsuchi were behind the Tsuchikage, Chojuro and Ao were behind the Mizukage, Darui and C were behind the Raikage, and Shikaku Nara and Hataki Kakashi were standing behind Tsunade. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the placement of the seats. He may not have been the sharpest when it came to understanding subtle things like that, but even he could tell that the fact that Conan had been seated away from everyone else did not bode well. If I didn't know any better, I'd be tempted to think this was an interrogation, not a summit between 7 world leaders standing on equal grounds. I don't like this. The fact that the Raikage and the new Tsuchikage were oozing malevolence directed at him and Conan didn't help his wariness either. With his negative emotion sensing, it was as clear as day that they didn't have any good intentions. In spite of his thoughts, Naruto didn't act up and stood quietly behind the curtain at Conan's back, waiting for things to unravel. In response to the Land of Rain's sudden emergence as a developing country, I thought it would be wise for us, the leaders of the ninja world and the Land of Samurai, to assemble here and discuss the current state of affairs. I, Mifune, the general of the Land of Iron, will be your moderator. Not even 2 seconds passed after the old general finished his words, and the Tsuchikage jumped in with a mocking tone. Amigakure has shown remarkable development in the last half a year. From a nation that was completely isolated from the world and in danger of going through a famine dash, I assure you that even during the Third Ninja War, when Amigakure was at its lowest, our people didn't starve. Conan cut the Tsuchikage off right away, not taking in stride their disrespect. After all, our production of rice and fish is the reason why Iwagakure tried to invade and pillage my country so many times. Tsuchikage Dano, Conan Dano, Mifune addressed the 2 of them before their verbal spat could escalate any further. We haven't assembled at this Kage Summit in order to reopen old wounds, but for the sake of forging a new future and consolidating the peace. Old wounds. Consolidating the peace. Sasuke spat in a voice quivering with anger. Don't fuck with me, she screamed and slammed a lava-encased fist into the table, incinerating it. As one, the 13 bodyguards hidden behind the tall curtains jumped in front of their leaders with their unsheathed weapons in hand. That bitch and her boy toy killed my grandfather, the third Tsukikage, and over 100 of our elite shinobi only a few months ago. You expect me to sit at the same table with her and smile? Fuck that. Kuratsuchi screamed as she stepped through her bodyguards and started walking towards Conan, her fists coated in lava. Sachikage Dano. You're on neutral land. Are you going to violate all the agree? Mifune began to say, only for someone's voice to cover all the noise in the room. Shinra Tensei. Kuratsuchi and her two bodyguards, Akasachi and Kitsuchi, were suddenly slammed back and blasted through the wall of the conference room, thrown straight out of the building. His lower face was hidden, and his voice was muffled by the rebreather covering his mouth, but the pair of ringed, purple eyes made it impossible for anyone not to know who he was. Conan put a hand on his shoulder, stopping him from going after them. I was led to believe that this was a neutral ground and that we would have a civil conversation about the future of our countries, General, Conan said coldly. Or was it all just a ploy to take me out here? That's certainly not the case, Conan Dano, Mifune said quickly. The old samurai was at a loss, unsure of how to deal with this unexpected development. As much as he was confident in his own skills, only God knew just what kind of destruction would follow if 7 Kage-level shinobi were to start a battle there, in the middle of the Land of Iron's capital city. At that moment, the Tsukikage and her two bodyguards ran back inside the conference room, looking as if they were about to pick up from where they left off, but Raikage's scream stopped them in their tracks. Tsukikage, control yourself. With Tsunade and Gaara also looking at her pointedly, the Tsukikage could do nothing but swallow her anger and stand down. While everyone went back to their seats, Kitsuchi placed his hand on the wall and covered the hole in it with a low-rank earth technique. In an attempt to defuse the tension and go back to the matter at hand, Mifune asked, I believe the next thing on the agenda would be to address the annexation of the Land of Rivers to the Land of Rain. Hokage Dano, Kazekage Dano. Seeing as the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire are the only other neighbors of the Land of Rivers, we would like to hear your thoughts on this matter. Considering the fact that Tsunade was closely familiar with what had transpired, she chose to speak first. The Land of Rivers feudal lord was killed during a diplomatic meeting between myself and Conan Dano by Hozuki Suigetsu of the Akatsuki. The Mizukage frowned at hearing that name, but she didn't interrupt Tsunade. That was when we killed the self-proclaimed Uchiha Madara and 3 other members of the Akatsuki, Suigetsu included. But that is beside the point. The Land of Rivers has not had a proper military force in decades. With their daimyo dead as well, it was bound to become a lawless place, ruled by rogue nins and other criminal organizations, unless it was annexed by another country. Amigakure was simply the first to take the initiative. I have no qualms about it. Myself and the Land of Wind's daimyo have no issues with it either, Gaara said. Mifune and the other Kage didn't find it strange that the Hokage and the Kazekage accepted the status quo so easily because if either Suna or Konoha were to cover the Land of Rivers, it could have led to a crack appearing in their alliance due to the balance of power being offset. In contrast, the Land of Rain was a small nation, so whether they annexed the Land of Rivers or not, it would not amount to much in the grand scheme of things. The two small nations united were still far from becoming a serious contender for the 5 elemental nations. Now that we have established that Hokage Dano and Kazekage Dano have no disagreements in regards to the Land of Rivers annexation, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Mizukage said. The Akatsuki and the Bijou. The atmosphere became heavy as all 5 Kage turned their eyes towards Conan. The Raikage was the first to open his mouth. Let's not beat around the bush. I know that you used to be a member of the Akatsuki. You were Pain's right hand. If anyone is to know what happened to the Bijou, you are the most likely suspect. Conan didn't let his accusatory tone get to her and merely replied in the same calm, stoic voice of hers. I am no longer a member of the Akatsuki. I left the organization once Pain died half a year ago and focused on rebuilding my village. Don't screw around with us. Tsukikage shouted and slammed his fist on the table. Ayo. Is she telling the truth? The Mizukage asked. At her words, the man in question stepped from behind the curtains and explained, "Every time someone tells a lie, there is a disturbance in their chakra flow. I've been observing Konan Dano with my Byakugan from the start, she has only spoken the truth so far. We're just playing around with words here," Kuratsuchi said impatiently. "The Nine Tails Jinchuriki has the Rinnegan. That Dujitsu is definitely connected to the Bijou one way or another." "I agree. B told me that the Bijou were being absorbed into a large statue, a weapon of sorts. Byakugan or not, I have no reason to trust you either. For all I know, Kirigakure could be colluding with them too. Don't think I haven't forgotten how several members of the Akatsuki came from your village," the Raikage shouted. "Ao merely stated the truth. We haven't taken Amigakure's side," the Mizukage said with a frown. "We want our Bijou back just as much as you. One village owning 7 of the 9 Bijou is madness. Such a thing cannot be allowed to happen. We might be barking up the wrong tree." Tsunade unexpectedly intervened to help Naruto's and Konan's case. "Konan Dano has not been part of the Akatsuki for half a year now, and the Akatsuki are still out there, plotting in the shadows." "What do you mean by that?" Mifune asked. "Didn't you inform us all that Uchiha Madara died at Uzumaki Naruto's hands and that Uchiha Sasuke was captured and his comrades killed?" "That was indeed the case. However, Uchiha Sasuke managed to escape with the help of Zetsu, the last member of the Akatsuki that we know of. It seems like Zetsu has a way of bypassing even our best censors' needs. It could be that, or it could be that there are traitors in your midst. Leave it to Amigakure to screw it all up and show the world again how soft and incompetent they are," that Tsuchikage said. Everyone around the table became tense when Tsunade's hand clenched into a fist and a vein started pulsating on her forehead. The slug Sanin's monstrous strength and her violent temper were infamous. "I advise you to get some etiquette lessons when you go back to your village, little girl," Tsunade said dangerously. "You would do well to remember that your actions represent the entirety of Iwagakure now. You are a Kage now. Act like one." In other words, she was calling her a spoiled and immature brat, and Kuratsuchi didn't miss that if the way she gritted her teeth in anger was anything to go by. However, she didn't fire back any retorts. She just let out a condescending scoff and crossed her arms to her chest. Whereas the bratty Tsuchikage managed to restrain herself, now it was the Raikage who looked like he was on the verge of blowing up. "Enough of this chit-chat," he screamed and slammed his fist so hard against the table that he made a dent in it. "This isn't going anywhere. I want to know what you did with the Bijou." "You'll have to ask the Akatsuki that question," Conan said indifferently. "She wasn't intimidated in the least." "You think we believe that? You were part of the Akatsuki yourself. Don't even think we'll let you weasel out of this so easily." Kuratsuchi also shouted. The Kage Summit lasted several good hours, but it bore no fruit. Due to the fact that Tsunade explicitly stated that Sasuke had escaped and that the Akatsuki were still around, the Raikage and the Tsuchikage didn't have a well-founded reason to insist that Konan was hiding the Bijou. They hadn't expected Tsunade to support Amigakure considering the fact that Konoha lost their Nine Tails Jinchuriki. It had thrown a wrench into their plans. Now, the two Kages didn't know how to proceed because Raikage wasn't skilled in diplomacy and Kuratsuchi was still too green and immature, lacking experience. Eventually, Mifune brought the Kage Summit to an end, understanding that it was leading nowhere. Naruto and Konan decided to leave the Land of Iron on the same day. The entire thing had been just a waste of time. Not only that the other Kage didn't acknowledge the Land of Rain and Rivers to be on the same level as their countries, but they did not formulate any plans on how to deal with Akatsuki's threat in the future either. Not wanting to reveal to the enemy the fact that he could summon himself and Konan anywhere on the continent through the use of his Rinnegan and Shadow clones, the two of them left the capital city on foot, like regular shinobi. "I don't sense anyone around us. Do you think we're far enough now to summon ourselves back home?" Konan asked. They were already a few kilometers away from Hofuna, and a powerful blizzard made it difficult for one to see even 20 meters in front of them. "I'd rather not take the chance. Let me double-check with my Sage mode." Konan's sensing ability was exceptional for a sensor Nin, but Naruto's senses could extend far wider than hers when his Sage mode was activated. For the sake of making sure they wouldn't reveal their cards to the enemy, Naruto decided to be cautious. His decision to be cautious saved them at that moment because, just outside the range of Konan's sensory ability, Naruto detected more than 10 chakra signatures. "We're being followed," he said, making Konan frown slightly. "How can this be? Do they have an Uzumaki with them, or is it a Hyuga?" As far as she knew, aside from Naruto's Sage Mode, only an Uzumaki's Mind's Eye of Kagura or a Hyuga's Byakugan could have a larger sensing range than her. "Their chakra feels familiar. I think they're from Konoha," said Naruto. He felt the beginning of a headache. "We could just avoid them and fly away until we're out of their detection range," she suggested, recognizing the expression of annoyance that flashed on his face. "Let's see what they want. There's a chance that Tsunade sent them to us." Once he said that, the two of them started snowrunning towards the group of chakra signatures that he had discovered. 7 people wearing grayish-white cloaks were waiting, hidden in the thick and tall trees of the ancient boreal forest covering most of the Land of Iron's mountainous territory. "I think they have discovered us. They've started snowrunning towards us," one of them said. His peculiar, pupilless eyes betrayed the fact that he was a Hyuga. Next to him, a beautiful girl with long black hair and similar eyes was watching the incoming silhouettes with great attention too. "I don't know about you, guys, but I'm getting kinda nervous," a boy in his late teens said, and the large white hound next to him barked in agreement. "I don't know why I agreed to follow y'all here in this crazy weather. How troublesome. Do you ever stop complaining?" Sakura rebuked Shikamaru in a harsh tone. "Don't let your guard down," the only adult accompanying them said in a serious voice. "He's not the same Naruto that you used to know." "Hey, Yamato-sensei, we haven't seen Rock Lee for hours already," a fat and burly teenager said in a worried voice. "Maybe we shouldn't have let him go for a run all by himself. That training maniac surely got lost in the forest," Sakura said. "But what were we supposed to do? Who is crazy enough to join him in his inhuman training in this kind of weather?" At that moment, Naruto and Konan appeared in their field of view. At the sight of him, the chatty teenagers quieted down like a miracle. A flash of emotion glimmered in his eyes when he saw the faces of his former comrades after all this time, but it was gone in the blink of an eye. For a moment, the two groups looked at each other in silence, not making a move. "Did the Hokage send you after us?" Naruto asked, cutting straight to the subject. "We aren't here on Lady Tsunade's orders," Sakura replied. We just wanted to talk to you, Naruto." As Naruto didn't reply right away, the rest were starting to feel uneasy. "It's been so long, man, are you not going to even say hello?" Kiba said, rubbing the back of his head, betraying how awkward he was feeling. "I killed Gai-sensei." As Naruto said that, it was as if he poured a bucket of ice-cold water over their heads. "I don't think we're in a position where we can act friendly with each other anymore." "That's not true, Naruto." Sakura was quick to contradict him. "You can still come back to Konoha. Lady Tsunade misses you. And I miss having you around too, we all miss you. Especially Hinata. Tell him, Hinata, you've traveled hundreds of miles in order to meet him. Don't be shy. Now it's the time, it's now or never." Hinata's face flushed a deep red, but she clenched her hands into fists and mustered all her courage before stepping out of her group. "Naruto-kun, I dash." But Naruto didn't let her finish her words. "I can't come back, Hinata-chan. You're a good girl, and I told your father the same thing a few months ago. But I have a different life now." He took Conan's left hand into his and raised it a bit for them to see the blue gem silvery ring around her ring finger. "I am engaged. I love Konan, and I'm going to marry her soon," he said, bringing Conan's hand to his mouth and pressing a soft kiss on the back of her palm. "I love Amigakure. The land of rain and rivers is my home now. It's been half a year since I left Konoha. I have already moved on. You should do the same too." Niji took Hinata's hand and pulled her back, rubbing her shoulder as he tried to soothe her. Her body was shaking from her silent sobs. To say nothing of Hinata, even Shikamaru was stunned speechless because, merely half a year ago, the blonde had been a loud-mouthed knucklehead, an overgrown kid that Shikamaru couldn't imagine marrying and settling down even after 10 years. Is he really the same guy? Before the whole blood prison fiasco, he was still having sexy jutsu contests with Konohamaru, for God's sake. Kiba's and Choji's feelings were no different either. They couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that a goofball like Naruto could change so much in only half a year. He was unrecognizable, but while the rest had somewhat expected to see a different Naruto due to Yamato repeatedly reminding them that he had changed, Sakura couldn't easily accept it. What about your promise? You said that you'd bring Sasuke back. I did bring Sasuke back, didn't I? I'm the one who defeated him and handed him over to Lady Tsunade. What about your dream? You said you would become the Hokage. That you would make everyone acknowledge you. Time change. People change, he said calmly. I wasn't good enough for Konoha. But the people of the land, rain and rivers love me. I may never become the Hokage, but I've become a daimyo's right-hand man and fiancé. But it's time for you to move on, Sakura. It's time for you to grow up and realize that life isn't a fairy tale. We don't always get what we want. Shifting his attention to the rest of the Konoha group, he said, I will not come back to Konoha. You should understand that sooner than later. There is no place for dreamers in the ninja world, and fools don't get to live for long. Such is a ninja's life. As he turned around to leave, Yamato, who had been silent until then, asked, Naruto, have you seen Rock Lee by any chance? Naruto paused his steps. He was quiet for a few seconds, making Yamato think that he wasn't going to answer. Yes. He ambushed us not long before we arrived at Hofuna. His unexpected answer set everyone on edge. Did you? Choji swallowed a node in his neck before continuing. Did you kill him too? He turned around to look at them before saying sincerely, I tried not to hurt him. I subdued him. But he was so obsessed with killing me that he opened the gate of death. At first, Niji wanted to shout, Lee would never do something like that, but he swallowed his words as his mind went back to Rock Lee's uncanny behavior ever since their sensei's death. His daily visits to Guy's grave even months after the tragic event, his exaggerated obsession with training, and his increasingly taciturn personality. Thinking about it, Niji realized that he wasn't surprised that Rock Lee would do something like that. Rock Lee opened the gate of death. Yamato said in disbelief before shaking his head and letting out a long sigh. Gate of death? What is that? Choji asked. It's as the name says, Niji replied to him. It's the last of the 8 inner gates. Opening the gate of death gives one tremendous strength at the cost of their life. It's a suicidal jutsu. If someone had still harbored a glimmer of hope that Naruto might one day come back to Konoha, they realized the hard truth at that moment. He was gone forever. Chapter 24, Invasion. It was a cold day in January. The sky was dark, a thick blanket of clouds blocking the sun. It was snowing so heavily that one could barely see 20 meters in front of their eyes. Amigakure registered a large amount of precipitation throughout the year. Whereas it poured in the warm seasons, it snowed in the cold season. Despite the terrible weather outside, a large number of people were trekking through the blizzard. Their red uniforms stood out like a sore thumb in that white environment, but with how hard it was snowing, it didn't matter much. Captain, our troops aren't in great condition, said a blonde-haired man with a scar on his eye. I can see that myself, replied the captain. He was a large and burly man wearing a furred trapper hat. How long until we arrive? He asked as he turned to another one of his subordinates. At this pace, we should reach the shores of the lake in half an hour, said the guide. Then we'll continue. We'll take a break once we reach the shore of the lake. As per the guide's estimation, the troops reached the shore half an hour later. Despite being in the heart of enemy territory, they were not afraid of making several campfires and warming themselves up at the fire. Nobody would be able to detect the smoke in that blizzard. Furthermore, the lake of Amigakure was so vast that one could not see its other end even on a clear summer day. It would not be wrong to call it an inland sea of fresh water. Once the break time was over, the captain gathered his troops. Over 5,000 shinobi gathered in front of him in an orderly fashion. Their red uniforms, brown flak jackets, and forehead protectors betrayed the fact that they were from Iwagakure. In normal conditions, shinobi or not, it would have been impossible for 5,000 people to sneak into the land of rain completely undetected. However, thanks to the terrible blizzard, they were practically invisible. Moreover, their guide was one of the civilian spies that IWA had planted in the land of rain to familiarize themselves with the topography of the country and the patrolling routes of the rain shinobi. Now, they were all in front of the lake of Amigakure, less than 10 kilometers away from the hidden village itself, which was located on the small island in the middle of the lake. "We are finally here," the captain said in a powerful voice. "Today is the day when our enemies pay in blood. They killed our Tsuchikage. They killed our brothers and sisters, our comrades. Iwagakure isn't so weak that we would let anyone get away with that. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We will kill them all. We will make them pay. We are proud ninjas of the land of Earth. We will slaughter anyone who stands in our way." Mindful of where they were, the 5,000 shinobi didn't break out into roars and cheers, but they all let out one strong word of confirmation. It was a quiet but deep shout. Their eyes were filled with resolve and anger. The captain nodded, pleased with their response. "Sensor unit, at the front." 24 ninjas walked in front of the army and took the first step on the frozen surface of the lake. "Make sure you scan the area for exploding tags thoroughly. We can't be walking into a minefield." The IWA shinobi advanced for nearly 7 kilometers on top of the frozen lake with no incidents. However, the sensor ninjas didn't let their guard down, because the closer they got to the hidden village, the higher the chance for the lake to be booby-trapped. "Are they really that confident in the power of their Rinnegan?" the captain asked rhetorically after a while. According to his calculation, he and his troops had already covered nearly 9 kilometers by now. The island in the middle of the lake should be only 1 kilometer away. It was too suspicious that they hadn't encountered any traps so far. But just as he asked himself that question, a loud explosion boomed, and his people's death cries filled the air. 5 of the sensor nines walking ahead of the main body of the army were killed on the spot. "What the hell are you guys doing?" the captain screamed. The enemy still couldn't see them despite being only a few hundred meters away in a completely open space on the surface of the frozen lake, due to the heavy blizzard limiting their vision. However, the noise of the explosion had surely traveled to their ears. The other sensor ninjas jumped away from the proximity of the explosion in a panic. They didn't understand what was going on either. Their senses had not picked up any signs of chakra. If there had been any exploding tags buried in the ice or snow, they would have definitely detected them. "Focus, you useless bastards." The sensors spread themselves out, putting more distance between each other so that they wouldn't be affected if another accident were to happen. However, merely 2 minutes after the first accident, another explosion went off. But this time it was not among the sensor ninjas but in the midst of the main body of the army. Over 30 shinobi and kunoichi were killed. The captain was enraged. "Worthless pieces of trash, you had one job," he screamed at the sensor nines. He was enraged to the point where he felt like killing them with his own 2 hands. But their clueless and frightened faces let him know that something fishy was going on. It made no sense that, among dozens of sensor ninjas, none of them would be able to spot those traps. "Step back. Our cover is blown by now. There is no point in trying to be stealthy anymore. Everyone, on my mark, cast a rock gun jutsu. Destroy the entire surface of the lake ahead of us." As the captain made a sign with his hand, nearly 5,000 shinobi went through 3 hand seals before spitting out a small pebble from their mouths. "Doton, Iwadepo no Jutsu." Thousands of pebbles were spat in the air, and only a moment later, those pebbles transformed into huge boulders, making it look like a rain of meteorites as they smashed into the frozen lake. All the traps that Amigakure had prepared for them ahead of time exploded, revealing the fact that hundreds of shinobi might have lost their lives if they had continued like before. Once the collective jutsu ended, the captain went to check the area by himself. It smelled of fire and smoke, and metal. What the fuck have these shrewd pieces of shit come up with now? Exploding tags didn't smell of metal. There was no metal in them, they were just ink and paper. In addition, there was no trace of chakra anywhere. No matter. Their new explosives didn't do them much good in the end. It's all clear now. Amigakure is only a few hundred meters away. Be ready to engage the enemy. "Hi!" the IWA ninja shouted and broke into a sprint atop the water, avoiding the pieces of broken ice left intact by the rain of boulders and the following explosions. Although the blizzard prevented them from seeing the walls surrounding Amigakure, by their estimation, they were now less than 100 meters away from the hidden village. Suddenly, the shinobi looked up, startled. Even despite the noise caused by the blizzard, their superhuman hearing still picked up the sounds made by projectiles when splitting the air. Some of the quicker ones quickly went through the required hand seals and cast a wall of mud by making use of the pouches of dirt they carried on themselves for this mission. However, many of them didn't react in time. A rain of burning arrows split the sky, injuring nearly 200 and claiming the lives of dozens. "Don't stop. Protect your vitals and advance at full speed," screamed the captain. A second rain of arrows came, but this time the shinobi were on their guard, and most of them managed to avoid them. At least that's what they thought until the cylindrical attachment strapped to each arrow exploded. From the moment Iwagakure's troops set off the first mine, the noise of the explosion alerted Amigakure. The shadow clone that Naruto had left behind was informed by his subordinates too, and he rushed to the city walls too. It was snowing too heavily for them to see anything, but once he entered Sage mode, he could sense that there were thousands of life signatures less than 1 kilometer away from their village. As a siren rang throughout the village, hundreds of shinobi dropped whatever they were doing, grabbed their equipment, and rushed to the walls. In the meantime, the non-chakra users, the regular soldiers who had been instructed on how to use the new weaponry developed by the Takumi village's craftsmen didn't remain idle. "Are the Uchiha armed?" asked Naruto. "Yes, Uzumaki-sama. But we can't even see the ground below the walls, much less the enemy. The blizzard is too strong." "Don't worry, I'll guide you," Naruto said, focusing on his sage senses. "The enemy is 150 meters away from the walls, at 11 o'clock. Aim your Uchiha in that direction, but at a distance of only 80 meters. The Uchiha handlers rushed to position their weapon as per Naruto's instructions and lit up the fuse. There were 3 Uchiha on that side of the wall. 3 Uchiha were capable of firing 200 arrows per shot. A total of 600 arrows were fired in less than 10 seconds. The Iwagakure shinobi's screams of pain carried by the wind were proof of their success. "Fire the exploding Uchiha now," Naruto ordered. The soldiers rushed to bring over the boxes containing the exploding arrows and loaded them into the Uchiha. "Aim at 30 meters. Ready. Fire." By the time the Iwagakure army reached the shore of the island, nearly 300 of them had been killed due to the minefield and the Uchiha's barrages of arrows. Squad 1, Earth Rampart. Squad 2, Iwadepo no Jutsu. Squad 3, Go Underground. At the captain's words, several dozen IWA nins placed their hands on the ground at the same time and shouted, "Doton, Doryu Johiki." A gigantic rampart rose from the ground until it was as tall as the walls surrounding Amigakure, protecting the IWA nins from the rain of arrows the AIM soldiers were firing at them. In the meantime, Squad 3, which consisted of nearly a third of Iwa's total number of ninjas, started sinking into the ground. It was one of Iwagakure's bread and butter techniques, Doton, hiding like a mole. The plan was for Squads 1 and 2 to start a head-on siege while Squad 3 infiltrated the hidden village by traveling through the ground, bypassing their defenses, and striking from within. But plans don't always survive the first contact with the enemy. Naruto and the rest of the censor nins in the village noticed their scheme, and they took action right away. It wasn't the first time Amigakure had been at war with Iwagakure. Not by a long shot. Conan and the rest of the veterans from the Third Ninja War were deeply familiar with IWA shinobi's modus operandi. Therefore, they had transformed the underground soil around the village into a minefield too, just like with the lake. "Detonate the underground bombs," Naruto ordered. Blood seemed to have drained from the captain of the Iwagakure army when the terrain around the village collapsed and muffled explosions and screams came from underground. More than half of the third squad was annihilated by the underground mines. The Uchiha weren't the only weapons that the Takumi village weaponsmiths had created after studying Naruto's Azura path. The mines that Conan had used to booby-trap the frozen lake were their creation, and it was the same with the remote detonating bombs that the ninja of AIM had buried underground. Seeing as they weren't chakra-based traps, they had escaped the IWA censor nin's detection. While Naruto was watching in satisfaction how the defenses that they had prepared against Iwagakure's invasion were cutting down their numbers, an AIM Chunin suddenly appeared in front of him and dropped respectfully to a knee. It was a girl with short brown hair, no older than 15, Uzumaki-sama. "There's trouble." "At ease, there is no time for ceremony at this moment." "What happened?" "The mines we had set on the frozen lake exploded all at once. It's the Raikage and thousands of ninjas from Kumogakure. The Raikage waltzed through the minefield all alone, setting them off. He doesn't have any injuries, she said in a rush. The Raikage? Naruto said in disbelief. It didn't make any sense. His original self and the rest of the Kage were, at that moment, all in the land of iron. It was several long days away. I know the Raikage is fast, but he can't maintain maximum speed over such a long distance. It's impossible. What the hell is going on? Thanks for reporting. Back to your post. I'll go deal with them myself. Naruto said, disappearing with a shunshin. Not a second after he arrived on the other side of Amigakure, a strong tremor shook the massive outer wall of the village. Lightning straight. As that scream reached his ears and he saw the huge hole that appeared in the wall, Naruto was convinced that the Chunin wasn't mistaken in her report. Dogs of Amigakure. This is your final day, the Raikage shouted as he stepped through the hole in the wall, a powerful aura of lightning surrounding his body. Before Naruto could intervene, however, a kunoichi in her mid-30s appeared in front of the Raikage and threw a palm strike. The Raikage didn't even attempt to dodge or block her. His lightning armor made him virtually indestructible to anything but the highest-rank futon jutsu. Taijutsu was utterly pointless against him, but his eyes widened to the size of saucers when a spiraling ball of blue chakra appeared in the palm of her hand. It didn't stop at being a palm-sized Rasengan. In the blink of an eye, it grew until it was larger than a basketball before it smashed into the Raikage's gut. Udama Rasengan, she yelled, and the tall and muscular Kage was launched back through the hole he came from like a cannonball. Greatly surprised but not any less happy with the new development, Naruto chose to spectate from the sidelines and watch the fruit of his training. Shiraishi Amaya. She was the third best among all jonins. She was the first to master Rasengan and the fourth to learn Kage Bunshin. Her chakra control was so exquisite that she had even managed to learn the advanced version of Rasengan. Right after Amaya blasted the Raikage out of the village, another shinobi quickly came in front of the wall and placed his hands on the ground, filling the hole. To the Uchiha. Amaya shouted amidst the cheers of enthusiasm from her comrades. Shinobi and soldier alike, don't spare any exploding tags or frag grenades. Kill them all. Their morale was at an all-time high after watching one of their own repel the Raikage in such an impressive fashion. Fire. At her orders, 2 Uchiha fired 400 arrows, and 1 Uchiha launched 200 arrows with explosives attached to their tips. The Kumo shinobi specializing in earth and water styles, were quick to cast earth and water wall techniques, but they couldn't protect all their comrades. In the meantime, the Raikage got up from the ground with a groan. Unexpectedly, his lightning armor couldn't protect him perfectly from the Rain Kunoichi's Udama Rasengan, and a red bruise was left in his abdominal area. However, Amaya's attack didn't hurt Raikage's body as much as it had hurt his pride. Enraged at having been humiliated like that in front of his own people, the Raikage decided not to pull any punches and go all out from the start. B. What are you waiting for? He shouted. Annihilate them all. Big bro, is it wise for me to attack from the start? What if the Nine Tails senses my Biju's chakra and dash? Killer Bee began to say cautiously. Just do it, the Raikage cut him off with a shout. That's what we brought here for. What's the point in having a weapon of mass destruction if you don't use it? Fine. But don't blame it on me later on if QB gets attracted and joins the battle. Leaving those last words, Killer Bee's silhouette disappeared under a mass of flesh and muscles, and, merely 2 seconds later, a behemoth of a creature appeared in front of Kumo army, dwarfing even the large and sturdy walls surrounding the hidden village. Oi, things are getting out of hand, Naruto thought seriously when he saw Killer Bee turn into the 8-tailed demonic ox. Clone Naruto didn't doubt that he alone would be sufficient in dealing with the transformed Killer Bee, but he didn't want to risk it. All it would take is one hit, and I'll get dispelled. After that, Boss and Conan won't be able to return to Amigakure in time. Therefore, he decided not to take any chances. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. Once he made those 5 seals, Naruto placed his hand on the ground. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Back in the land of iron. Considering the fact that Naruto and his shadow clones shared the same sight through the Rinnegan, Naruto was aware of the fact that Iwagakure had invaded his village. However, he couldn't just bail out in front of the Konoha shinobi. Besides, that's why he trained his shinobi and put so much effort into sharing his techniques with them. for Amigakure to not be completely helpless without him or Conan. For them to have the power to stand on their own too. Nevertheless, when his shadow clone saw Killer Bee transforming into the full form of the eight-tailed demon ox, he didn't have a choice in the matter anymore. Rock Lee opened the gate of death. Yamato said in disbelief before shaking his head and letting out a long sigh. Gate of death? What is that? Choji asked. It's as the name says, Niji replied to him. It's the last of the 8 inner gates. Opening the gate of death gives one tremendous strength at the cost of their life. It's a suicidal jutsu. If someone had still harbored a glimmer of hope that Naruto might one day come back to Konoha, they realized the hard truth at that moment. He was gone forever. While they were all silent and deep in thought, Naruto said, I'm sorry, but I have to cut our little reunion short. Something urgent came up. Wait, Naruto, don't go. I need to ask one more thing. Sakura said quickly. Do you know anything about Sasuke? He disappeared, and we dash. Naruto ignored whatever she was saying and turned towards Conan to take her hand in his. The pink-haired girl had yet to finish her words when the of them vanished. What the? Kiba said, mouth agape. Niji and Hinata activated their Byakugan and scoured their surroundings, but there was no trace of them whatsoever. I can't believe it, was that Hiration? Shikamaru said in shock. Hiration? As in the 4th Hokage's teleportation technique? Don't joke around. Sakura said in disbelief. Yamato and Choji were speechless. The group of Leaf Shinobi didn't know that Naruto's clones could summon him thanks to Rinnegan's animal and outer path abilities. They mistakenly thought that he had learned the infamous Flying Thunder God technique. Back in Amigakure, the Rain Ninja's enthusiasm at Amaya's feat of repelling the Raikage was doused as if someone poured a bucket of ice-cold water on their heads when a titanic silhouette appeared in the distance. Not even the terrible blizzard could hide him. The 8-tailed demon ox was so large and intimidating that most of them became paralyzed with fear. Jinchuriki had always been feared throughout the elemental nations. Perfect Jinchuriki, however, were the stuff of legend and nightmares. The Rain Ninjas had not understood the terror of facing a perfect Jinchuriki until that moment. We're going to die. It was the thought that ran through everyone's mind when black and purple chakra started gathering at the creature's enormous mouth. It was the Biju's most powerful attack, the tailed beast bomb. Let alone a small hidden village like Amigakure, even a large one like the 5 great hidden villages would be erased off the surface of the earth if they were to be hit with an attack like that. Amaya closed her eyes. Is it really over? They all knew that Lord Uzumaki and Lady Conan had left the village and gone to the Kage Summit in the Land of Iron. He had left a shadow clone behind, but she couldn't imagine what use a mere clone would have in front of this disaster of nature. Frustration boiled inside of her. She was one of the oldest active shinobi in Amigakure and a veteran of the Third Ninja War. She had been through hundreds of battles, and the many scars on her body were proof of her victories. Recently, she had even gotten more powerful thanks to their new lord sharing his prized jutsu with them. However, at that moment, she felt as if nothing mattered, as if everything she had accomplished in her life until then was for naught. No jutsu that she knew of and no ninja tools and weapons could defend against something like that. Bijudama. The 8-tailed demon ox roared and fired the enormous tailed beast bomb at Amigakure. When everything looked as if it was lost, just before the massive orb of destruction was about to impact the walls, a man flew out of the village and stopped in its trajectory. He raised his hand in front of him calmly and said, Gakido. The Rain and Cloud ninjas alike all watched with shock how the massive-tailed beast bomb stopped as if it had hit a wall. Then, its shape distorted, looking as if it had been liquefied before being sucked through an invisible funnel into Naruto's palm. The entire process lasted nearly 10 seconds, but the Kumonins were so shocked by the new development that they could not do anything but stare open-mouthed at the scene. Seemingly uncaring of the fact that he was alone against over 5,000 enemy ninjas, Naruto landed on the ground and walked until he was right in front of the Raikage. You never had any intentions of giving Conan the title of Kage or discussing the future of the elemental nations. This Kage Summit was just a farce, a trick to get Conan and me away from Amigakure. The lightning armor around the Raikage exploded in intensity, reacting to his emotions of anger. The Kage Summit wouldn't have been for nothing if you had decided to cooperate, he shouted. We tried to solve this peacefully, but you spat on our good intentions by deciding to keep the bijou to yourselves. Good intentions? You. It takes more than a week to travel from the land of lightning to the land of rain. You had planned this attack a long time ago, and you even allied with the Tsunade to destroy us. You're a two-faced scum. You are pathetic. Unable to take that disrespect, the Raikage lunged at Naruto with a lightning blitz, screaming, "Lightning lariat!" But the blonde caught his wrist with his left hand, stopping his charge effortlessly. He was like an immovable wall and his physical strength was unlike that of a human. For the second time in his entire life, the Raikage had met someone who was above him in physical strength. He could not believe it. Due to his Rinnegan eyes not changing their appearance, the only sign betraying the fact that Naruto had entered Sage mode was the orange pigmentation that appeared around his eyes. But the Raikage had never seen a Sage mode user in person. In the next moment, Naruto grabbed the taller and more muscular man by the neck with his right and choke-slammed him, making a crater into the ground. Raikage-sama! Darui shouted and a panther of black lightning burst from his hands, charging at Naruto at the speed of light. Naruto didn't even look in his direction as a third arm grew from his torso and absorbed the black lightning technique. The Raikage screamed as he struggled with all his might to break free, but it was for naught. Naruto activated his Preta path and drained all the chakra in his system, leaving him barely alive. Turning his attention towards the army of Cloud Shinobi in front of him, the blonde said in a cold, dangerous voice, "I don't want to cause a bloodbath. I don't want to kill you all, but I will do what I must to protect my country. I am giving you a choice, go back to your country. Give up on this war and live." Don't listen to him, the Raikage struggled to scream even as he was being choked. Kill him. Kill him even if it's the last thing you do. In response to that, Naruto lifted the Raikage by his neck and choke-slammed him again, deepening the crater into the ground with the force of his slam. No longer protected by his lightning armor, blood burst from the Raikage's mouth from the strength of the impact. Let go of the Raikage, a dark-skinned girl with long red hair screamed and charged at him with her sword. Karui. No, a busty woman with short blonde hair shouted, trying to stop her, but the girl didn't listen. Die, shithead, she screamed as she brought her sword down on him. An unimpressed look was on Naruto's face as he watched her attack him. Letting go of Raikage's wrist now that he was weakened, he brought his left hand up and slapped at Karui with the back of his fist. Karui's sword shattered like glass when his back fist clashed against it, and, in the next moment, her head exploded like a watermelon when his punch smashed into her face. Blinded by fury, her teammate, a white-haired boy with dark skin, was the next to charge at him with his sword, but Naruto punched a football-sized hole into his torso, killing him on the spot. That was like a signal that jolted the entire army of Amigakure into charging at him. The militaristic and battle-crazed ninjas of the Land of Lightning were just built different. There was no retreat in them, no cowardice in the face of adversity. Rare. The ground and the walls of AIM shuddered with their battle cries as they charged at Naruto with bloodlust in their eyes. So you have chosen death. The old him would have still tried to hold back and attempt to talk sense into them. But he had long since stopped being that person. The ninja of Amigakure invaded his homeland and attacked his village. They came here to kill his people and destroy his home. He had already given them a chance to retreat, but they did not take it. Now, he had no reason to hold back against the enemy anymore. A cloak of red chakra engulfed his body as he raised his left hand in front of him and said, Shinra Tensei, Chapter 25, A Cruel Fate. Previous chapter. The ninja of Amigakure invaded his homeland and attacked his village. They came here to kill his people and destroy his home. He had already given them a chance to retreat, but they did not take it. Now, he had no reason to hold back against the enemy anymore. A cloak of red chakra engulfed his body as he raised his left hand in front of him and said, Shinra Tensei. Waves hundreds of meters tall were raised when an area of the lake 2 kilometers in width and over 7 kilometers in length was suddenly displaced by an incredible pushing force that blasted away the water, the ice, and the thousands of shinobi on top of it, revealing the lake bed deep below. His sage senses were telling him that the Eight Tails Jinchuriki had survived the overpowered Shinra Tensei that he had just cast and that he had managed to save over 100 of his comrades by covering them with his soft, squid-like body. Similarly, another shinobi, a lava release user, had encased nearly 50 of his comrades in a sort of rubber ball, which saved them from the first impact, sending them bouncing all the way to the other shore of the lake. However, the larger part of the Amigakure army was obliterated in one attack. That was the power of the Rinnegan. Holding the Raikage in the air effortlessly with one hand, he grabbed him by the back of his neck and forced him to watch the broken and mangled bodies of his people floating on the surface of the lake amidst the shattered pieces of ice. "Tell me, Raikage. Is that what you wanted?" The Raikage didn't answer. He was just putting up a struggle to get out of Naruto's grasp. But he had no chakra left, and Naruto's physical strength as a sage was not unlike that of a monster. It was futile. "How many ninjas does your village have?" 15,000. 20,000. You lost over 4,000 of them today. Was it worth it? "Don't think you'll get away with this, Uzumaki," the Raikage screamed, frothing at the mouth from rage. "You have made the whole world your enemy. You will pay for this. You will die a terrible death. We are humans. In the end, death claims us all," Naruto said calmly. "One day I will die too, but you won't be there to see it." "No, wait. I've just thought of something better." Naruto's free hand turned into a short, thin, jagged blade as he activated his Azura path. Raikage howled in agony as Naruto shoved his hand-turned blade into his spinal cord. "No. Kill me." Raikage shouted through his screams of pain when he realized what Naruto was doing to him. "At least grant me a clean death." Naruto sneered at him. "Why? So you can take the easy way out." He twisted his blade hand into this spine, crushing it completely. With how tough Raikage was, that wasn't enough to kill him. However, he would be turned into a vegetable for life, paralyzed. "No. I'm not going to kill you. I'll let you live with your failure and feel the weight of the 4,000 people that you have doomed because of your greed for power. You won't even be able to kill yourself. You will be kept alive by your subordinates, all the while having to hear everyone blaming you for leading Kumogakure's sons and daughters to their deaths." Carrying the paralyzed Raikage by the neck, Naruto flew in the direction where he could sense the Eight Tails chakra. Arriving there, he saw that Killer Bee had come out of his bijou form and returned to his normal appearance. Many of the people he had managed to save were knocked unconscious by the impact, but the rest who were still conscious and able to stand, froze in terror when they saw the blonde with his Rinnegan eyes gleaming coldly stepping out of the blizzard. "All this could have been avoided if you had taken my offer and retreated when I told you," said Naruto, throwing Raikage's unresponsive body at them like a dirty rag. "I'm not here to kill you all. Take your Kage and fuck off." He turned his back to them, clearly unconcerned with the fact that they could attack him from behind. "There will be no mercy for you if you attack us again," Naruto said as his body disappeared in the blizzard. But his voice was still carried by the wind to their ears. "Next time you attack AIM, I won't just kill you. I will come to your village and put an end to you all. I will raise your village off the surface of the earth. This is my final warning." On the other side of Amigakure, despite the deaths they suffered because of the minefields and the volley of arrows and explosives fired by the Uchiha, the IWA Nines were relentless in their attack. The huge rampart raised by Squad 1 proved to be invaluable in limiting the amount of damage that the Uchiha dealt, but the problem was that the battle entered a stalemate, with both IWA and AIM Nines hiding behind their large walls. "This isn't good," the captain inwardly said as he observed the new development. Normally, an army of 5,000 IWA Nines would be enough to swiftly annihilate a minor hidden village like Amigakure, provided that they attacked by surprise. However, Amigakure seemed to have prepared for an invasion ahead of time. It was as if they had known that they were going to be attacked. Furthermore, their new weaponry had truly set Iwagakure back. What should have been a blitzkrieg had now become a siege. Well, no matter. Conan of the Akatsuki and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki aren't here. We still have the absolute advantage. Due to the terrible blizzard that didn't let one see further than 20 meters ahead of them, the captain and the rest of the Iwagakure Nines didn't know that Naruto's shadow clone was inside the village or that he had summoned the original body and Conan to Amigakure either. Iwagakure and Kumogakure's invasion of AIM was based on the premise that Uzumaki Naruto and his Rinnegan were going to be absent from the village. With Uzumaki Naruto and Conan being in the land of iron, thousands of kilometers away, there would be nobody left in the village hidden in the rain to stop them. A smile appeared on the captain's face when he heard a large explosion in the distance, and he laughed evilly. "Ha! Kumogakure's troops are here too." The captain reckoned that Amigakure had placed most of their forces on the side of the wall that IWA had attacked. He didn't know that those hundreds of arrows weren't fired by hundreds of archers but by less than 10 people, of whom half didn't even know how to wield a bow. Therefore, Kimogakure's arrival brought a smile to his face, thinking that AIM would now have to split their forces to deal with the new invader, thus making his goal of breaking through their walls easier. Once we breach their ramparts, they'll be dead meat. The captain almost laughed out loud when he thought about the glory and riches that the Tsuchikage would bestow upon him once he returned victorious. He made up his mind to reap all the benefits by contributing the most to their victory. "I'm going to step out of cover and shatter their walls," the captain suddenly said in a loud voice to make himself heard by everyone. "Squad 1, provide cover fire for me with Iwadepo no Jutsu. Squad 2, prepare to launch your Earth Dragon technique once their walls are down." "Understood," his subordinates yelled. The IWA captain made a snake seal with his hands, and his skin turned a very dark brown. It was one of Iwagakure's most formidable defensive techniques, Earth Spear. In spite of what its name implied, the Earth Spear Jutsu was not an offensive technique, it was actually a rock armor jutsu that made the user almost invulnerable to all attacks except for the strongest lightning techniques. It was a direct counterpart to Raikage's lightning armor. Once he covered his body in that earth armor technique, the IWA captain made a hole in the huge rampart and broke into a sprint towards the tall and thick walls surrounding Amigakure. A hail of hundreds of arrows came from behind Amigakure's walls, but he was too fast for most of the projectiles to reach their mark. AIM shinobi standing on the top of the walls fired all sorts of water, earth, and fire techniques at him, but the IWA captain tanked them all by lowering his head, crossing his hands in front of his chest, and running like a bulldozer straight ahead. At the same time, a hail of rock boulders was fired by the IWA nines, forcing the AIM shinobi to take cover, thus lowering the number of attacks that the IWA captain had to bear. The IWA captain grunted in pain when some of the enemy's lightning techniques managed to hit him, but those jutsu weren't formidable enough to shatter his rock armor. An ugly grin appeared on his face when he finally reached Amigakure's wall and placed both of his hands on it. Doton, Earth Collapse Jutsu. Panicked cries came from the range shinobi and soldiers standing on the wall when it started to shake and crumble like during an earthquake. It took only half a minute for the enormous wall protecting the hidden village to collapse, raising a large and dense cloud of dust amidst the blizzard. "They're ours now," yelled the IWA captain. "Kill them all. For Iwagakure. For the third Tsuchikage." A chorus of thousands of battle cries rang as the IWA nines charged towards Amigakure. But then, nearly 200 glowing spheres of blue light appeared in the cloud of dust, obscuring everyone's eyesight after the collapse of the wall. Some of the more cautious IWA nines stopped and quickly raised a mud wall to protect themselves, but most of them just charged ahead, blinded by their fury and desire to kill. Alas, regardless of whether they raised a mud wall to protect themselves or simply charged ahead, the result was the same in the end. Almost 200 rain chunins and jonins jumped from behind the broken walls with a spiraling orb of chakra in their hands. Rasengan. Mud walls crumbled like wet sand when their Rasengans collided against them, and those who were hit directly were blasted back, rotating uncontrollably, or they were gored out, huge chunks of their torsos missing. Not a single one of those targeted by Rasengans managed to survive. Although there were over 4,000 IWA nines, the sudden, swift, and brutal attack of the 200 Rasengan casters abruptly halted their enthusiastic charge. The IWA captain threw himself at the closest AIM ninja, throwing a devastating punch empowered by his rock armor jutsu. However, instead of punching a hole through the unfortunate shinobi who happened to be close to him, the IWA captain's fist was blocked by a wide and strange-looking weapon. His face turned pale with fright when his rock armor faded away from his body, and a feeling of vertigo came over him as over 80% of his chakra reserves were drained in one go. His opponent was a large and muscular shinobi, seemingly in his early 40s. Despite his age, he had a head full of wild crimson-red hair, and his red eyes were filled with the vigor of youth as well. He was a Uzumaki. But the most eye-catching thing was the peculiar weapon in his hands. Nearly half a meter wide, and as long as the man was tall and covered in what looked like shark fins, there was not a single shinobi worth his salt who hadn't heard of it before. It was Samahata, the strongest sword among the 7 swords of the mist. Samahata doesn't like your chakra all that much, but at least the quantity was good enough, laughed the red-haired man out loud. SM Heda. How, was the only thing that the captain managed to utter. In the next moment, a loud whooshing sound was heard as a huge sword came flying to him and split his body in half from the waist. What the hell is wrong with you, kid? Why did you steal my kill? Yelled the Uzumaki infuriated, all the while ripping an IWA nin's body to shreds with Samahata when he tried to attack him. The one who had thrown the sword was a young and skinny brown-haired boy no older than 16. It was unreal to think that someone as young and frail as him could throw the Kubikurabocho with such strength. But that was only until one took a look at his monstrous, demonic-looking right arm and realized that he was part of the infamous Ibaraki clan, the same clan as Sasuke's former teammate, Yugo. Oi, swear on. Don't ignore me, you little prick, shouted the older Uzumaki. You were taking too long to kill him, said the boy blandly before grabbing his huge sword and throwing it like a tomahawk at two other IWA nins who were protecting each other's backs, killing them both in one strike. Alas, although they were momentarily cowed by Amigakure's unexpected barrage of Raisengans, in the end, the IWA army still had the numbers on their side. As hundreds of IWA ninjas launched their Earth Dragon techniques, the AIM nins were forced to pull back. Despite their formidable individual strength, the two elite jonins of Amigakure, wielding two of the famed seven swords of the mist, were forced to retreat too under the Iwagakure army's formidable offense. Nevertheless, the IWA army was paying in blood with every step that they managed to advance. I think it's time to put an end to this, Naruto's shadow clone thought. He had let his subordinates engage the Iwagakure army in order to let them get a taste of what Rasengan's power was like and give them the opportunity to build more confidence in their strength. However, Naruto's clone had no intention of just sitting on the sidelines and watching how his people risked their lives while he was doing nothing. Making use of the clouds of dust raised by the wall's collapse and the terrible blizzard raging outside, Naruto flew high up in the air undetected and let himself crash land in the middle of the advancing Iwagakure army. Before the surrounding shinobi and kunoichi could react, he placed his hand on the ground and said, Kuchios no Jutsu. An enormous plume of white smoke clouded the entire area, reducing everyone's visibility to zero. Then, a roar like that of a primordial beast shook the skies. The clouds of smoke and dust were blasted away, and even the terrible blizzard momentarily stopped from the strength of that roar. Dozens of IWA nins felt as though strength had left their legs and fell to the ground powerlessly when they looked at the titanic beast that had appeared in their midst. It was an eight-tailed demonic fox over 60 meters tall. Give them hell, Kurama, said Naruto, and Kyubi roared in approval and excitement before an enormous torrent of fire came out of his mouth, reaping the lives of nearly 100 shinobi in one go. A one-sided massacre began as the bloodlust Bijou started tearing, smashing, and incinerating all the IWA nins in his sight. The fox was pouring out all his hatred for humans and thirst for vengeance into his attacks, getting back at Iwagakure tenfold for trying to seal him a few months ago. Less than 2 minutes after Naruto summoned Kyubi on the battlefield, the surviving ninjas of Iwagakure turned tail and ran desperately for their lives. Initially boasting a number of 5,000 shinobi, only 1,500 managed to make it out alive, and even that was only due to Naruto deciding to spare their lives and asking Kurama not to chase after them. While the village hidden in the rain was under the two-pronged invasion of the armies of Iwagakure and Kumogakure, things were very peaceful in a region of the land of iron that was close to the border with the land of grass. All one could see with their eyes was a vast expanse of snowy mountains covered by coniferous forests. It was a peaceful and serene sight. Nobody expected that the will of Kagaya, Black Zetsu, and the remains of Akatsuki had built an underground base in those mountains. It appears that the second Kage Summit bore no fruit. It was just a glorified interrogation for Conan. The Raikage, the Tsuchikage, and the Mizukage were dying to find out what happened with the captured Bijou, said a white Zetsu clone as he popped up from the ground. Interesting. We might be able to use this to our advantage, Kabuto said, smiling as a devious idea came to his mind. What are you plotting in that devious mind of yours? Black Zetsu asked in his usual grouchy tone. Nothing for you to be worried about, Kabuto said quickly. I was thinking that we could use IWA, Kumo, and Kiri's help to destroy Amigakure if we revealed to them the fact that the Bijou are all stored inside the Geto Mazo, which is under Uzumaki Naruto's control. As expected from a snake, White Zetsu chimed in. More importantly, what is going on with Sasuke? Black Zetsu asked and turned to look at the pod installed in the middle of the laboratory. Naked as the day he was born, an unconscious Uchiha Sasuke was submerged in a green liquid while a mask prevented him from drowning and supplied him with oxygen. But there was one thing that didn't look normal to him. The right arm, the one where Kabuto had injected him with Hashirama Senju's cells, was inflated beyond the proportions of a regular human, and it looked like it was in the process of transforming into a plant-like limb. Nothing is wrong with him. Everything is going according to plan. Black Zetsu glared in his direction. Was it part of the plan for him to lose control of the Hashirama cells? Kabuto pushed the rim of his glasses higher on his nose with his index fingers as he smirked. As a matter of fact, it was. Without warning, 5 wooden spikes burst from the floor underneath Kabuto's feet, but he shined away before Black Zetsu's jutsu could impale him. "You're finally showing your true colors, wretched snake," said Black Zetsu, his voice harsher than usual due to his anger. Kabuto just laughed as his legs turned into the lower body of a snake, and he slithered out of the room at great speed. "If you thought you could cross me and live because I mostly did scouting work for the Akatsuki, you're in for a big surprise," Zetsu said as he sank into the ground and started following Kabuto, who by now had already slithered out of their underground base, disappearing into the forest. By the time Black Zetsu finally caught up to Kabuto, the humanoid snake was waiting for him with 3 coffins in front of him. Black Zetsu frowned as the coffins' lids fell off, revealing the corpses inside, Nagato, Itachi, and Deidara. But Black Zetsu wasn't intimidated. Slapping his palms together like in prayer, the ground started shaking and cracking as a humongous wooden statue grew out. It was so large that it dwarfed even the tall and ancient forest, standing at over 100 meters in height, width, and length. It was a colossal Buddha statue with countless wooden arms. Kabuto laughed leisurely when the titanic Buddha statue moved its countless arms to attack him. "If I didn't have Uzumaki Nagato on my side, I might have been worried. But your Mokuton is nothing in front of the power of the Rinnegan." As Edo Nagato raised his arms and activated the Preta path to absorb all the incoming attacks of the Buddha statue, Edo Itachi's eyes turned into his Mangekyo Sharingan, and he said, "Amaterasu." A moment later, as Black Zetsu was engulfed by black flames, Kabuto controlled Ito Deidara to create a large clay bird to mount, and then the 2 of them flew away, straight towards the laboratory. "I won't let you get away with it." Black Zetsu screamed. A plant-type Kawarimi made him shed his previous body, escaping the flames of Amaterasu, and then his arms turned into 2 enormous vine whips, which he threw at the flying Kabuto and Deidara. However, 5 rapidly flying birds collided with Zetsu's vine arms and exploded with a great bang. Black Zetsu jumped off the enormous Buddha statue, intent on abandoning it, but a voice was heard from below, and he suddenly lost control over his body. "Bansho Tenin." Black Zetsu screamed in anger and frustration as Ito Nagato cast his universal pull. His whip-like vine arms coiled around the great Buddha statue in order to stop himself from being pulled off, but Nagato's technique was so strong that Zetsu's vine arms were ripped from the middle. "These insignificant and worthless dash," Zetsu began to shout in rage, but his words were cut off midway when a glowing, ethereal orange blade stabbed through his torso. "What? What is going on?" he asked, more than a little shocked and with a hint of panic in his voice. When he raised his head and his eyes fell on Uchiha Itachi, who was surrounded by a gigantic, ethereal samurai of orange and red light, realization dawned on him. "No dash, is this? No." Black Zetsu screamed as he was sucked into Uchiha Itachi's Tatsuka blade, getting sealed away for eternity. "Sealing success," Kabuto said, smiling, pleased at Ito Nagato and Ito Itachi's success. In truth, he had never had any doubts that Black Zetsu would lose to Nagato and Itachi's reanimations. "I don't know if I could win against those 2 either if they were to be alive." After all, Itachi's Tatsuka blade was the big equalizer, and Nagato's Rinnegan was simply too unfair to fight against as a ninjutsu specialist. "Nevertheless, they are under my control now. And soon, so will be Uchiha Sasuke too." A long, snake-like tongue came out of his mouth as he licked his lips while looking at Uchiha Sasuke's unconscious body submerged in the pod. He had carefully increased the dosage of Hashirama cells that he had administered to Sasuke so that he would lose consciousness, but not to the point where the Hashirama cells would take over his body completely. His snake tail enlarged until it became gigantic and smashed headfirst against the pod, breaking through its outer glass and wrapping around Sasuke's body, the prize that Orochimaru-sama had been fighting to obtain for many years. It's finally in my grasp. Kabuto closed his eyes and took a while to relish the moment of sweet triumph. But I learned from Orochimaru-sama's mistakes, so I will not repeat them. 2 small snakes grew from his fingers and bit Sasuke's face, gouging his eyes out. The eyes were left perfectly intact. Despite that Sasuke was unconscious, Kabuto decided not to take any risks. He was going to reimplant his eyes after he claimed control over the Uchiha's body. Once his 2 snakes slithered away and placed the eyes in a flask filled with medicinal liquid, Kabuto gave the flask with Sasuke's eyes to Ito Deidara and commanded him to wait outside the room. Now. At last. I will fulfill Orochimaru-sama's dream and get a step closer to achieving perfection. Getting the Mangekyo Sharingan was merely the first step. Kabuto was fully intent on making the Hashirama's cells in Sasuke's body his as well, and awakening the Rinnegan too. Kabuto's head turned into that of a grotesque-looking snake, and his mouth opened wider than humanly possible, wide enough to swallow a full human whole. Raising Sasuke above his head, Kabuto lowered him slowly into his mouth and swallowed his entire body in one go. Kabuto's human form disappeared completely as he transformed into an enormous snake, who then proceeded to coil up and fall into a deep slumber. Outside the room, Edo Deidara, Edo Nagato, and Edo Itachi were standing guard emotionlessly, not saying a word. But that was only a facade due to Edo Tensei's absolute control. Deep inside, Uchiha Itachi was seething with rage and vengeance at watching his little brother lose his life, falling prey to Orochimaru's disciple.